Battery 80%.
Well, I like kombucha, so can we have it again? I like the trees that you send. I like the sea, can we see it again? I like the way you are mad, but you kinda pretend. I'm here for the journey, I'm here for it all. I'll ride or die, I just need to see you all smiling, smiling. Smiling. I like the days as they fade into evening. I like the way you stuck stars on the ceiling. I like the nights we can fight in the morning. I like the way you pretend you aren't tired when you yawn. I'm here for the journey, I'm here for it all. I'll ride or die, I just need to see you all smiling, smiling. The laughter you scatter is all that matters to me. I love the way you light up the room when you call. I like how you dance when you pretend that you don't know I'm watching. But I'm trying to pretend it's not so important at all. I'm here for the journey, I'm here for it all. I'll ride or die, I just need to see you all smiling, smiling. Sing with kids on, so I sang with kids on mule. Not a good look, such a fool. I changed the case, why aren't they thanking me? Oh, well, off to Thailand where I paid for ladies spanking me. YouTube doesn't want me, cancelled and it haunts me. Where have all the patrons gone? Good luck with your channel, son. Blinded by the money, where's Nancy when I want her? I'm just an old man who likes ladies with nice hair. YouTube doesn't want me, cancelled and it haunts me. Where have all the patrons gone? Good luck with your channel, son. Blinded by that, I'm just an old man who likes ladies with nice hair. YouTube doesn't want me, cancelled and it haunts me. Where have all the patrons gone? Good luck with your channel, son. Blinded by the money, where's Nancy when I want her? I'm just an old man who likes ladies with nice hair. YouTube doesn't want me, cancel and it haunts me. Where have all the patrons gone? Good luck with your channel, son. Blinded by the money, where's Nancy when I want her? I'm just an old man who likes ladies with nice hair. YouTube doesn't want me, cancel and it haunts me. Good luck with your channel, patrons gone. Good luck with your channel, son. Good luck with your channel, son. Good luck with your channel, son.
Hi, you're with Scott. I'm Super Chuffer. It's midnight. It's always midnight. This is your right ear and your left ear. And today is, look at that, seamlessly into the background music. Do you like that? Seamless. Just a little bit of a seam, just a small seam into the background music. Today's a special day. It's Alan's remedies hearing. Shouts out, of course, Frankie, if in chat. Maybe people might have some questions, and if Frankie's in chat, he might want to answer them directly with you in chat. So I got up this morning, I had the link, I went in the video room, the Zoom call, and it's the Zoom call for the court, and you're not allowed to record it. So I haven't broken the law and recorded it, because I don't want anyone having a video on my computer where they'll be like, oh, look at that, what's that video? Oh, get him. But I watched it. I was there as an observer, and I took notes, extensive notes. And the plan for the stream today is that I'm going to read through the notes and explain to you what happened. How does that sound? That sounds fine. It sounds loud in my ear. Is the piano okay in the background? Is the piano okay in the background? Actually, of all things, of all times, strangely, I feel a little bit like nervous today. I feel a bit like nervous. Like I need to get this right. Obviously, I don't sleep well, and I got up early. I think it was a lot earlier for Frankie in America. Shouts out Ellis. Quick, press the button. Stop that now. Yeah, you want to hear what I've got to say? Well, I'll give my opinion, I suppose, at the end, or while I go through, I'll give some opinions. But I've got a big one to put at the top, which is like, I can't, like, it's such a serious process. And to this, like, you know, I haven't seen within the process. This is the first time I've got to sort of, like, you know, sit and see the court in action. And I've not been in a court, really, you know, in my life. I haven't done that many bad things. Alan just, like nothing sinks into him, does it? Like, he doesn't understand at all, like, the magnitude. Sometimes things happen where you see things from one angle, like, we see things from this angle or that angle. We're on the internet, we're talking, there's this channel, someone said that on that channel, petty squabbles, quite serious squabbles, you know, this and that. But the court isn't really interested in all of that bullshit, is it? Like, the court's quite interested in the law and the workings of the law and how things are to be done properly. And I mean, we'll see as I go through. Like, basically, at one point, Alan, and you can all, no, okay, headlines for everyone. At one point, Alan went on his big rant. Alan got to cross-examine Frankie, in inverted commas, cross-examine. It wasn't supposed to be a sort of, where were you on the night of the 14th cross-examination moment. That's not really what that moment was for, but Alan sort of shoehorned it in. And then, like, Alan said things that I can't understand how he doesn't, like, I'll get emotional at points. I'll get emotional. You know, Frankie made it clear that he was not just the victim of this defamation, but that, and you know, that in his words, that his family had been murdered. And Alan seemed more like, you know, in the scale of what's important. Do you know what I mean? Like, Alan seemed more like concerned with pedantics over who had done the transcript of a video and how they'd like. Alan was looking for, of all things, he was looking for technicalities and like nonsense. His time to get platformed, you know, his chance to speak before the judge. It's like he didn't understand what was happening, really. Like, we're in the remedies part. The judgment's already happened. This is about talking in a legal sense to decide how much money he's going to have to pay. And whilst there is some judgment involved in that, so there's a judge, Alan doesn't get to put his case now. Like, that chance already was afforded to him, and it's already passed. And like, there were a couple of moments where I think, like, I think everyone in the room, apart from Alan, I suppose, but everyone in the room was sort of shocked by how bombastic, aggrandizing. I mean, he's a narcissist, isn't he? But like, self-aggrandizing, self-important, self-concerned. Like, as an outside observer, you know, that's my main takeaways. Like, and I think for the court as well, you know, they're going to see that themselves. Like, at one point, it felt like Alan was using the platform to repeat the defamation. Well, I mean, I'll read it to you. He fucking was. I don't think that's a good thing to do. I don't think that. Yeah, he very much played the victim, didn't he? Yeah, that's it, Frankie. He very much played the victim. And I think I won't be able to express it properly, but Alan wasn't his normal self. Alan was trying to pretend to be a vulnerable old man. So at times he would like do that. You know, he does that baby, you know, I don't know where it is, or somebody's going to have to help me. I'm just a dyslexic old man, Your Honour. And he kept like the sucking up to the judge. Sir, Lord, Sir, Your Honour, Sir, Lord. Yes, sir, yes, oh, sir. And like, I should leave it in the run of the thing, but towards the end I feel that Alan felt he was happier to have a male judge, and that in some way this was like a fresh judgment that was going to come for him. Like, I think Alan felt that this was good for him, and it wasn't. I think we are allowed to discuss it, yes. What it said was, legally you're not allowed to take screenshots and you're not allowed to record it, and God help me, I'm not going to do something illegal on my computer, not with all the trolls, you know. So I didn't record it, but I did my very level best to sit here and type it all out. I'm not that good at speed typing, touch typing, and there was a lot. So I'll do my best to get through it. How about that? He was very unprofessional and unprepared, yeah. If you've got questions, like, in chat, I'm not the person to really ask because I'm not that informed, but I'll relay as much as I can for you. How about that? Thank you very much to Red Van for the gifted memberships as we got going. Come on, buttons.
Torchy, Torchy. That I remember Torchy when I was a little tiny boy. I used to love Torchy. Torchy the battery boy, the blonde one, the dark one, and the butch one. I don't remember the names.
Okay. My notes are quite extensive, actually. Like, when I say extensive, I tried my best just to write what they said. So I've got notes of what happened, and I'll try my best to read through them and, you know, relay them to you then. Yeah, should I just get going? I mean, that's what everyone's here for, aren't you? Anyone got any other questions before I, you know, go through that process of doing my best to relate to you what happened? Anyone got any other questions? And I'm sure, you know, my opinions are going to start to come through as we go through, which, as I said, I don't really think that Alan really understood. Like, nobody can until I saw it from the judge's eyes, and I haven't seen the whole, you know, but the barrister and the judge, you know, the way they were talking about it, and you'll see what I mean. I didn't see it from their eyes in that way. You know, I saw it from, I think of Alan as just some idiot in a room in, I won't say where he is, I'm not trying to dox him, but, you know, I just think of him as some, like, you know, fool in a room chatting nonsense. But, like, the magnitude of the seriousness of this, you know, and I don't think Alan really understands how serious it is either. And that's what's so weird, is watching him sort of go through it. Okay. So, get on the call. It's 10:30 in the morning. Obviously, I don't like getting up in the morning at all. I had to get up at 9 o'clock in the morning. I felt that was terrible. Cup of coffee. I'm ready. They can't see me or hear me, but Frankie's in the room ready. Frankie looks smart. He's got a proper suit on. His tie. He looks smart. And serious, of course. And, you know, ready and on time. There's a couple of other people in the room which I checked, they are legal people. So, like, they're involved with Cohen Davis solicitors. So I don't know who they are, but, you know, they're in the chat room too as, like, black screens. And we're waiting for the judge, and we're waiting for Alan, I suppose, yeah. Frankie's early. I'm early. A lady starts talking, you know, are we in the right room, this and that. And Frankie talks to her, and I note that Frankie sounds a little bit downbeat and low-key, but it is very early in the morning in America, and it's a very serious thing. But the lady asks Frankie to get the Bible so that he can swear himself in. Frankie gets a Bible, that's no problem. Then Alan arrives at 10:20, and Alan is dressed. This photo is probably one of the best ones that I've got to. Like, he looks a bit like this, I don't know. But he's dressed in a black blazer with a white unbuttoned shirt. So he's tried to go smart, but he hasn't. He still looks scruffy. Like he's halfway house. He's a white unbuttoned shirt with a black blazer. And strangely, he sits in a location that I've not seen him before. Behind him is a row of plugs. So it's like, you know, when you're in a hospital or a library or somewhere, and they've got like this plastic rail that has all the plugs housed on it. Like behind him is 4 sets of steel plugs and a little, what I consider to be like a little electrical cabinet or something. I don't know where he is, and it might be that he's in a solicitor's office or somewhere like that, or some. It looked a little bit of like a formal. I feel like someone else was with him during the call. I feel like someone else was like, you know, sat over the other side of the room. Okay, occasionally Alan would mute and talk to somebody, so I feel like someone else was there, and I don't know where he was. I've never seen that location before, but it looked a little bit formal. Alan seems in a bad mood. There's no filters, so he looks haggard. Frankie eyes him with distaste, and in some ways I think the makings of a slight smile as we prepare. You know, this is Alan's on the hook, and I think Frankie feels confident at this point because we've already had the judgment. You know, this is supposed to be in Frankie's balance, I think. Alan shuffles papers, and we can hear that his mic is on, so he doesn't have to ask us, "Can you see me? Can you hear me? Is anyone watching?" Like he does at the start of his TV show, his YouTube, not YouTube. He's been banned. His, what is it, that platform he's on, that other, you know, the rubbishy one that the court said was a haven for conspiracy ideas. Anyway, Alan shuffles his papers, and we can hear that his mic is on, and I do wonder where he is because this is not his usual setup. We're a small group in the thing. I assume there are other people in the gallery, but I can't see or hear or interact with any other people in the gallery, so I don't know how many other people are there watching. I don't know if they know that I'm watching. So yeah, to me, it appears to me like a small group has been assembled, and we wait in an awkward silence. Gervais de Wilde, that's the solicitor, the barrister, the lawyer, excuse my terminology, you know, that's the official law representative on Frankie's side. Gervais de Wilde, on behalf of Cohen Davis, turns up 10:24. He's got a smart, simple setup, clean background, cameras working. He begins by addressing Mr. Vinnicombe and Frankie with a good morning, and Alan doesn't respond. Frankie does and says good morning. At 10:26, Jackie appears, and everyone is quiet. Who's Jackie? Jackie's the court, I think, stenographer. She's the court. She's got a name. I've forgotten what it. Oh, I should have written down what her. She's the court helper. It's not helper. She's got an official name. Jackie's going to hate me now. Shit. And then Dan Squires arrives, and Jackie reads the contempt warning. Dan is the judge, and Dan appears not in a like wooden courtroom, but in an office like you would expect, like a legal barrister's office, with white doors behind him and papers and a computer. And it looks like he's, you know, doing a lot of law business in this room because there's a load of papers and a computer. It looks quite official, and he's smart, and his camera works, and everything's fine. Yeah. So Jackie reads the contempt warning. I'm not to record, so I won't. Squires has problems hearing Alan. Mr. Vinnicombe's muted. He fixes it. Now we can hear him. Is that better? He asks. Squires gives the orders and the application for relief from sanction. Then the claimant, then the defendant. So he explains what we're going to be doing. Okay, a few moments through this, I've made notes, and I'm going to have to say, I don't know exactly what the legal terminology means, but the application of relief from sanction, then the claimant, then the defendant, and Gervais doesn't intend to cross-examine Mr. Vinnicombe, and he's unsure if Mr. Vinnicombe wants to cross-examine Frankie. The judge, Squires, wants to know if Mr. Vinnicombe wants to question Frankie. Alan wanted to put the questions in writing, in writing, but he has questions, so he wants to put. So he says yes. This feels a little bit on the fly. Alan doesn't know the process. They've offered him the opportunity to question Frankie, and I don't know if Alan knew this was going to come up or not. But he's answered yes. He said he wanted to put the questions in writing, but he's happy to do them live. You can tell that Frankie's lawyer knows what's going on, and has, no, Your Honour, we don't want any questions. And when Alan is asked, he's like, oh, I don't know, should I, you can tell that there's this question mark over the process with Alan. Squires says the Wild is going to go first, and he's going to put the application of relief. So on the 14th of April 2025, Susie, the judge, failed a deadline. There's something about a deadline failure. It's been put in the logs. And Wild refers to the bundle. There's a lot of boring dates, but he makes it clear that Mr. Vinnicombe's note, 150 in the bundle, he objects to relief being granted. I've written here, right, Jackie's typing's really loud. I can't hear what's going on. So what happens is now that Jackie's not typing, the judge is typing. And when they say things, the judge types them all out. And if I just type something here... There's a bit of that going on, and I'm typing as well. So I can't really hear exactly what's happening when they're all typing. So what I do is I go in the board thing and I put a message and I say, Jackie, are you on mute? Because I think, there's a messages thing. And I put, Jackie, are you on mute? The typing is quite loud. And Jackie responds with, no, that's... What did she say? She said, that's his honour. That's his honour typing or something. And I put, my bad. It wasn't Jackie, it was the judge. So we all have to listen to the judge. That's fine. I'm not critiquing. The judge has got a good microphone. It's picked up the typing. He's got to type. What are you going to do? But I find it a little bit difficult to hear and understand exactly what. But Gervais is seeking permission, and he's explaining that there's an oversight on Alan's part. And Gervais is arguing that the claimant's lawyers were focused on other aspects, trying to list the hearing and dealing with the defendant. So I've written that the sound is a little bit bad, but there's an application. Essentially, I think both sides have got some sort of application about relief being granted, and Gervais is arguing that the application was prompt enough and the application for release from sanctions, and he says we submit that the defendant has the wrong end of the stick. The unfairness would be for the claimant, not for the defendant. Something about not allowing the evidence due to a mistake. And Alan is arguing, and I've put this in capital letters, that there's a technical error. So what's happened is Alan has submitted some sort of application to put a stick in the wheel because of a technical error. Maybe if Frankie knows more about the technicality here. There you see Frankie saying in chat there, the witness statement was a little late, so you had to ask for forgiveness. It was late because we didn't know if we were going to push the court date. Yeah. So they talk about it in legal terms, which are difficult to understand. And Gervais apologises for any inconvenience. They address Mr. Vinnicombe's application for sanction in March, and they argue that their default is because Alan was fucked. I've written fucked. Alan, reading, said that their evidence was submitted late and he only has a certain amount of time to respond to it. Like, this is all really ironic. I'm hearing this and trying to type it really fast, but I've also made a big capital letters note. Do you remember Alan was fucking them about all the way? I'm going to hand it in at the last minute. You're not going to get a thing out of me. I'm going to drag it all over the... Alan was messing them about all the whole time, yeah? You all remember that. And now, at this late stage, when it comes to the money, right? Not with his defence, because that's already passed, but at this late stage, when it comes to the money, Alan's trying to argue a technicality about something being handed in a little bit late. And Alan cried and moaned that they got him on a technicality. So it's like the pot calling the kettle black. It's hypocrisy, and it stinks of how Alan behaves. And I get the read from the way that the judge is talking to the lawyer, and they're both talking to each other like grown-ups, legal terms. They're both handling the business, and neither of them seem to think this is a big deal. But Alan wants to push it as a big sticking point. Alan's on the screen because he's talking. This is brilliant, right? Alan's on the screen because he's talking, and he's talking about the evidence being submitted late. And then Alan tells the judge that the judge needs to stay on the screen. And the judge explains to Alan that Alan must stay on the screen because it's Alan talking. And that the judge doesn't have the ability to change who's on the screen, that the Zoom call does it automatically when someone's talking. And Alan explains that it's difficult for him because he's dyslexic, and when the judge becomes a little picture, he doesn't know what's happening. ChatGPT gives Alan his answer about non-compliance under CPR, and basically Cohen Davis was 10 weeks late with compliance, and Alan's saying that his evidence was thrown out on a technicality, so the claimant needs striking for his own technicality. The seriousness of this default. Alan is reading ChatGPT badly. Technical issues for the cost order. Fairness. Alan says, and I quote, "I've never agreed to them bringing in verbal evidence that's not been heard." Alan says he should not be allowed to give new evidence. He asked a few questions only, a small number. All right, wait. Okay, so this is about new evidence, right? He should not be allowed to give new evidence. He asked a few questions only, a small number of questions. Alan wants to ask a small number of questions. He doesn't consent to the introduction of oral evidence, and he says it would be unfair. He wants to not allow new evidence. He's been denied a fair opportunity to respond, and that Cohen has included their costs for today's hearing. Sir, Lord, anyway, that's for you to sort out. So we're going to get to the cross-examination in a minute. So before we get to that, so what happened is they discussed this compliance thing, this technicality of lateness, and I think they both agree. I might have got things in a if I come to it again later, I apologise, if I feel like I've got my notes out of order, but they both agree, the judge and the lawyer, that because both sides did a bit of this, both sides were late on different things occasionally, it's not very important, and I don't think it makes a big deal, but it's noted, sort of thing. Yeah. It comes to the cross-examination section next. I need to have a little drink of coffees. Ooh. Right. This is a really difficult part. They explain, the comedy will start and then it'll get serious and then we can have a laugh again, I suppose. But the comedy at the start is that, as I said, they ask basically if Alan wants to bring in verbal evidence. And Alan says he never agreed to them bringing in verbal evidence that's not been heard, that they shouldn't be allowed to give new evidence. He only wants to ask a few questions. He doesn't consent to the introduction of oral evidence. That would be unfair. He wants to not allow new evidence. But he's been denied a fair opportunity to respond. And that Cohen has included their costs for today's hearing, so he asked the judge to sort all this out. And the judge says that the claimant won't be able to give evidence unless you cross-examine him. So Alan says basically in court that he doesn't want to give new evidence, but he does want to cross-examine Frankie so Frankie can give new evidence. Like, Alan contradicts himself. And the issue is Alan wants to have it both ways. He wants to ask questions, but he doesn't accept Frankie can respond. That's what Gervais says, Frankie's lawyer. The issue is that Alan wants to have it both ways. He wants to ask questions, but he doesn't accept Frankie can respond. The judge says, "Mr. Vinnicombe, does that make sense? The evidence in chief will be what's in writing. If you ask him questions, you get more evidence. Then you can be asked more questions. If you don't, then no more questions mean there's no more evidence. He's not entitled to ask questions that don't come out of the cross-examination." Alan says, "It's not clear to me. What is Frankie doing? Making a statement?" The judge confirms that Frankie will confirm his statement unless Alan asks more questions. And the judge is being very, very patient with Alan. He's like explaining it to him like he's a baby. Frankie's not here to give evidence unless you ask him more questions. Alan says that's very helpful, Your Honour. And so he's like sucking up to the judge at this point. The judge says he has to consider the significance of the breach adverse to parties hearing. Okay, this is the bit where they work out whether this is the bit where they work out whether it's the lateness. So the judge has heard these things and now he has to give his reply on it. This is difficult, isn't it? The judge says, "I have to consider the significance of the breach." We talk about the lateness. Adverse to both parties, Hearing dates put back, unfair positions. Do you have anything else to add, Alan? Alan says, the problem I had with Cohen is that I was over and over given less than 24 hours to send replies. I feel they're trying to get an advantage over me. Even today, this order of costs. I got this at 1:41 yesterday. It's not compliant with, and then he states the paragraph, but he's being pleading and weak and getting a little bit eggy. He says, now that's what I've been putting up with for 6 years. Alan says the previous judge was going to give me costs. I can't afford a lawyer. The judge says, wasn't your statement late, Alan? Alan replies, March. The judge, being very nice to Alan, says your statement was 10 months late. Alan says, because of all the hold-ups. That was why. The judge asks if there's anything else, and Alan says no. Gervais agrees no, and the judge takes a moment to make notes. He will grant relief from sanction to both parties. In short, this is not a serious and significant breach. Any breach is serious. This is directed by the Denton case to see if it's serious and significant. The consequences are not averse. Both are late, and there's an oversight. There's no blame, and both should be admitted. And he'll talk about it more later. The next step is the claimant reading his statement, and then Alan can ask questions. So they set it all up. They outlined what Alan couldn't expect to happen. You know, do you want to ask questions? Do you don't? It's going to mean there's going to be more evidence if you do. Okay, we're going to do that. I've given you my response on this lateness stuff. You know, it's like they've done the housekeeping at the start and got these things sorted out. The lateness is now not going to matter. They referred to a case called the Denton case. We're now going to set up for Alan asking his questions. At 10:56, we call the claimant. Frankie swears in. He sounds a bit like Johnny Depp. The judge asks him if he's sitting in front of a light, and Frankie explains that it's very early in the morning, so it's dark there. And I can see him just fine, to be honest. But I understand what the judge, is asking. Jackie swears him in, hand on the Bible, says his full name, and he's got a printed copy of his witness statement. Gervais talks him through it. They turn to the last page and say, is this your signature? And is it true? And Gervais hands over to Mr. Vinnicombe. So they don't read all of Frankie's statement. That's already sort of submitted. You know, the court's heard it. Frankie's position here is, yes, that's my statement. And that's all I need to say. And then they hand over to Alan. Alan approaches this. Bearing in mind this is a remedies hearing. So, as I've said, this isn't like LA law, time to, where were you on the night of the 14th? If Alan's got questions, I think they need to be primarily focused on the remedies, and I think the court thinks so too. Or, adding, or, if it's in, like I guess in legal terms, you might be able to do more here in these, I don't know, but like you've got to do it in legal terms. And what Alan, like, you know what Alan's like, yeah? Alan sort of thinks this is his opportunity in so many ways to sort of behave like a bombastic lawyer off the telly a bit, to like have Frankie over it a little bit, I think. But Alan does start with, good morning, Frankie. I've never spoken to you before. First of all, with regards to your sister, and at that point my stomach goes, I think, what the fuck? He says, first of all, with regards to your sister, condolences. I quote, all I ever wanted to do was prove your sister ... And then I don't know if the court direct Alan to ask his questions. I can't remember if it was the court, because at that point, I don't even write the rest of the sentence. I can't even take the note. I am absolutely stunned that after all of this, I mean, it's one of those moments. It's like, for Alan especially, he's like, because he says it, I've never spoken to you before. It's like, this is our chance to speak. And he just, condolences. All I ever wanted to do was, and he starts into that. And of course, that's not the time and place, at all for this, is it? So question 1. Alan asks, he says, it's been alleged that you had a criminal record, is that correct? And the reply is yes, that's the allegation. And Alan says, do you accept that you had a record? And Frankie replies, traffic, yes. And Alan says, no, minor, anyone can see them online. And Frankie tells him that he can't look it up online because he's in the UK and he hasn't got the right to look things up in America. Alan says, I don't want to say what you've done, but you've got a record, yes or no. This starts to become already, these two fellas don't like each other. And this already is, you can see that Frankie's being quite reasonably defensive and resistant to Alan's questioning, I'd say. He doesn't want to be questioned like this. This is, and to everyone else, it appears to be, in my opinion, it appears to be quite distasteful and shocking, I guess. I find it distasteful. I don't feel comfortable with it at all. But Alan, it's combative. Combative's a good word for this. I don't want to say what you've done. You have a record. Frankie says it's traffic. No. And Alan says, I can go on with this, but you swore you have no record. He says, I can't go on with... Alan goes, I can't go on with this. I can't go on with this. You swore you've got no record. And Frankie says, I have a record, but I'm not a criminal. I've got a record, but I'm not a criminal. And you called me a criminal. And Alan says, oh, is it only traffic? And Frankie says that the juvenile thing was something else. And Alan and Frankie argue, and this starts to be... They're starting to talk over each other a little bit. Frankie's saying, you called me a criminal, and Alan's saying, you have a record. And the judge obviously steps in. The judge confirms that there's a criminal record. He doesn't say a criminal record, but the judge confirms that we're talking about contributing to the delinquency of a minor. And Frankie agrees that that's the only thing, that's the only evidence. And Alan then says, what about your girlfriend's children? I don't want to do this, Frankie, but you're pushing me in that corner. I know the convictions. He won't admit them. He doubled down and said he hasn't got a criminal record. He raised 60 grand on the premise that he doesn't have a criminal record. Alan says that as an outburst at the end, I guess, an outburst at the end. And then that line of questioning has come to an end. Frankie doesn't respond. Nobody says anything. And we move on to the next question. And it's really, really awkward and uncomfortable. That's really awkward and uncomfortable. And it turns out, as well, I'll say this now actually, because I was confused a little bit. It turns out that it's not even really important to the court case. That when they talk later, the reasons for being sued, the reasons for the case, the things the judge is going to be deciding on, or was already decided on actually, because this doesn't matter now unless Alan can provide some actual new evidence, I think. It doesn't matter whether Alan says this and he says that and this and that. We're talking about the Remedies hearing here. This is a hearing to find out how much money Alan's going to pay. So bringing this up now is the wrong time. So it's not going to make a difference in that way. But also... when they discuss things later, it turns out that Alan's sort of hooked on this idea that if he can prove that Frankie's got a criminal record, then everything goes away. And it's not just about that. It's about his continued pattern of behaviour. It's about these particular videos that they've used as examples. They're examples, but the judge is taking into account that Alan continued for years, that Alan kept doing it until he was banned, that Alan talked about it immediately when he started up on Rumble, that there's this continued story around gang stalking, all this other stuff got brought into it. So when we come to talk about that in a minute, you'll see. But Alan at this point seems to think he's got some sort of big gotcha moment. We move on to the phone number. Alan says, you have a phone number and you changed it. Frankie says, I had to change it because of you. Alan says, you gave out your phone number to the CBI. And Frankie says, I gave it to the FBI and you shared it and I got death threats. Alan says, your video got 1 million views. You gave your own number out. It's in the discovery. Frankie contests that and says, you gave my number out. The judge says, you can make submissions later on. So the judge is stepping in and saying to Alan, this is not the time for this. And Alan continues. Do you agree your number is in the discovery files? Frankie says, yes, but you showed your number on the channel. Alan says, but it was in the video. The judge stops the argument again and says, submissions come later. Alan, he gave his number to the authorities and it was public. In the interview, that's like Alan's, again, like it's like we go on a question, at the end of the questioning where the judge has said this isn't where we go with this, Alan then just states his thing that he wants to say, and then everyone is silent and we move on to the next question. At this point, it's becoming a pattern with Alan, isn't it? In the interview, you state you couldn't... This is Alan. In the interview, you state you couldn't work until 2017 because of depression. On the tape, it's anxiety and depression. And Frankie says, I didn't say that. Alan says, I've got the recordings. The judge has copies. The judge says, if it's in the bundle, show us now. Alan, surprisingly, in this one, says page whatever, exhibit A. So actually, in this phase, Alan seems to be doing quite well. And it's kind of awkward to watch. Because he would be doing quite well if we were in the evidence-giving phase of a trial, that we've already had, where his evidence wasn't able to be submitted because he didn't do it properly. And, this isn't the time for it. So it's really awkward to see Alan sort of strutting his legal stuff in an inappropriate moment. But, he seems to be doing all right in this moment. The claimant discloses his own number, Alan says. Excuse me. Thanks very much, dog. The claimant discloses his own number, Alan says, and the judge then says, I thought this was about anxiety. So in that moment when Alan seemed to be doing quite well, all of a sudden he wasn't because he picked out the wrong piece of evidence and we go back to normality. Alan then finds the correct exhibit and he says that Frankie tells the interviewer he's got long-standing issues. Frankie states that he did have anxiety and depression, and he says that Alan says he wasn't working. Alan starts to ramble. I can't make all the notes when Alan's rambling simply because he is partially incoherent. Like he slurs a little bit and he says things that don't quite semantically make sense. Like some of the words don't make sense. He starts to ramble and the judge tells him to stop and focus. Okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm making notes, right? I'm trying to make notes here, and at the same time my brain is going like, what the fuck? Like Alan's doing a ramble and the judge has just told him to stop and focus. The judge says, Alan, I thought this was about anxiety. Alan, he did have anxiety and depression. Frankie, but you chose to doormat me. Alan, you said you were unable to work. Frankie says, I didn't say that. Alan asks, can you work now? And Frankie says, yeah, why not? And Alan says, because of me. And Frankie says, but that was then. And this is another one of those moments where I think Alan believes he's in a television programme. Oh, I've got him, but can you work now? Ah, but can you work now? Your Honour, I submit. Caught him in a trap. He said he couldn't work, but now he can, and I'm still here, and now he's not upset, or is he upset, or is he not? I submit. It feels like Alan feels quite bold. But again, we come to the end of the line of questioning because there's nothing else to say. Frankie's answered that was then, this is now. And the court just, accepts that that's Alan's question. I mean, it's very strange. It's very strange because this is a remedials hearing, remember. Alan continues, did the crowd justice stall because of me? Frankie says yes. Alan says, was it not because you lied to your donators about the criminal records? And Frankie says, no, it was you. Alan says, you didn't have people asking for their money back. Frankie says, I don't care. Alan starts to make a bit of a list here. He says, you didn't have people asking for your money back. You didn't have da-da-da-da. You didn't, he starts to get his egg up. And Frankie's interjecting with, I don't care. Alan says, has Mr. Cohen told you that people ask for their money back? Because Mr. Cohen is dealing with the criminal thing, isn't it? And Alan then says, you swore on the Bible. And Frankie says, no. Frankie seems a little bit, like, I said earlier, he's quite low key in terms of, it's very early in the morning. It's not a very pleasant thing to be going through. And in this moment, he seems to be a bit wanting to sit back from this going on because it's getting a bit, yeah. Alan continues, he's blaming me for the lack of donations. Frankie says he told them to ask for the money back. Alan says, no, I didn't. Frankie says, is he going to swear on the Bible? Is he going to swear? Because Alan said, no, I didn't. And obviously that's a lie. You know what I mean? Like, no, I didn't. And Frankie says, is he going to swear? And the judge says, listen, we're not doing submissions. This is just supposed to be questions. And Alan then continues, it's a back and forth that's gone on for years, this. It's good to talk though, isn't it, Frankie? And Frankie says, no, there'll be no other conversation than this. And like we, you know, draw a line on that question. And it's a really weird moment because, as I said, as they're having this like uncomfortable argument about whether Alan tried to shit up their crowdfund, Alan at the end of it just says to Frankie, to his face, it's good to talk. It's good to talk. Like, this has gone on for so many years. It's good to be able to talk. And like for Alan, obviously it is, isn't it? He's had all these things that have been building up that he moans about on stream, and he constantly eggy, and he, you know, going on and talking about the case. And now he's sat with Frankie and he's telling Frankie why he's cross. Like for Alan, he feels like it's good, yeah? So he voices that. It's good to talk, isn't it? And Frankie, obviously, because you can see, like I said, the body language of it all, like, is not enjoying this and does not want to talk to Alan, and simply says, no, I will never talk to you. After this, I will never talk to you again. Let me see if I got that quote right. Frankie says, no conversation other than this. You'll have no conversation other than this. And like, it's like I say, it's like Alan's on a different world. The judge sees it. The barrister sees it. I see it. Frankie sees it. Alan, out of nowhere, at the end of that question, says, it's good to talk, isn't it? After all this time. Alan continues. He was trying to stop the constant harassment and stalking, Alan says. Alan was trying to stop the constant harassment and stalking. Alan claims that Frankie was in their channels, supporting them and cheering them on. He says, what do you have to say about the cease and desist? Bringing up a cease and desist that Alan sent to Frankie, he claims. Frankie says, you never sent it. And what's the question? Alan says, why are you saying I affected your life? Sorry, it might be the judge that asks, what's the question? Because this is starting to get a thing. And Alan says, why are you saying I affected your life, but you were on YouTube chivying these hate groups on to harass me? Quote, chivying. This is really important. I'll like flag this. It comes up later about these harassment, the gang stalkers. So you've heard the story about the gang stalkers, haven't you? You've heard him going on about the gang stalkers. So keep that in mind, because it's been brought up here by Alan. Alan says that Frankie was in their channels supporting them and cheering them on, and that Alan was trying to stop the constant harassment and stalking. The judge says, again, is this a question? After Alan says, you were on YouTube chivying these hate groups on to harass me. Alan states, you were on YouTube chivying these hate groups on to harass me. And the judge says, is that a question? Alan says, are you aware of the cease and desist letter? Frankie, you state I threatened to disseminate a new picture of you, but others, KK, CC, put it up there. Sorry, Alan is saying to Frankie, sorry if I'm getting these things wrong, I'm trying my best. So I try and do it in Alan's voice. He does get very, at one point he speaks very, with his accent at one point, when he gets in his flow. Alan says, you state I threatened to disseminate a new picture of you, but others, KK, CC, put it up there, and I tried to help you take it down. And the judge asks, what's the question? Alan says, was the pic put out by other people? I might be confused here. I've put Frankie says this. Was the pic put out by other people? Sheila, your witness, shared it. And then there's talk of a revenge porn hotline. And Frankie states, you threatened me? And Frankie gets cross and says there's going to be no more questions. The judge asks Alan, are there any more questions? And Alan, being an absolute slime, says, no, Your Honour, I can see it's a stress for him, so I don't want to ask him any more questions. But right at the end, I think it's Frankie who says, Alan, was the pic put out by other people? Sheila, your witness, shared it. And we had to call the revenge porn hotline. Yeah, that's Frankie says that. Because I'm not aware of this picture and I don't know exactly, no. But what happens is that Alan tries to say that he had trying to take it down, and that KK, I don't know who KK is, and CC, but Alan says that they did it. So Alan points at other people. If you know who KK and CC is, Alan tried to implicate you in court to hide it, to cover himself. And then he said that he tried to get it taken down. Frankie gets mad and says the picture was put out by other people, that Sheila shared it and they had to call the revenge porn hotline, and that you threatened him, Alan. And then, this is, like I say, I'm speaking it in normal voice, but these two are getting a little bit cross. So Frankie says, I don't want to do any more questions. And the judge says, have you got any more questions? Because Alan's not been asking questions now for a little bit of time. And Alan does his slimy bit. He says, no, it's too much of a stress for Frankie. I don't want to do any more questions. Really bad. Next, Gervais Dewald, the barrister for Frankie, starts up. Alan, why did you approach Cohen Davis? For harassment. Have I got this right? Oh no, sorry. I've written Alan, but I mean Frankie. Dewald's talking to Frankie. Why did you approach Cohen Davis? Frankie says, for harassment and defamation, because Alan's been tormenting me for 6 years. Gervais says, you gave evidence, and was that supposed to do with a criminal record or other reasons? What was it that Alan did that stopped people donating? And Frankie says, he told people to stop donating. He called me a fraud, and he called Cohen Davis frauds. I remember him doing that. I covered it on stream. Gervais says, you were asked about your phone number. Can you describe what happened in the video disclosure? Frankie says, I gave my phone number to the FBI when my family was murdered. And like I say, a few moments, it just the gravity of this. Like when Frankie states it in court like that, when my family was murdered, no one should have to speak those words, should they? And it's just such a, I think we, I've not been around this whole thing for as long as some of you, but Frankie's so strong to be able to go through this and talk like this in court, and it's not lost on me, and it makes me emotional. But unfortunately with Alan, it is completely lost on him, and it just goes completely over his head. I gave it to the FBI when my family was murdered. I didn't know Alan shared it with the internet to harass me, but what had happened was and Frankie, sorry, I'm going to paraphrase, but Frankie explains that other people did videos, and when they showed the details, they blanked out the phone numbers, so that we're going to talk about these files. Obviously, it's got people's personal details in. I've blanked them out. Let's talk about the files. But when Alan did it, he deliberately left those things in so that people could harass Frankie. And Gervais says thanks. Alan's on mute, but he's talking to someone during this process. Now it's time for Alan's evidence to be introduced. It's his turn. Alan is going to be sworn in. They ask him if he's swearing or affirming, and he doesn't understand what they mean. So they ask him if he has a Bible, and he says no. So he's going to have to affirm. It's in stark contrast to Frankie, who had a Bible on hand and swore on the Bible. Alan doesn't do that because he hasn't got a Bible on hand, and he just affirms. When it comes to the affirmation, it's a simple task of reading out what the judge says, the court person says, but Alan can't follow along, and he asks them to stop and do it slower, and he explains that he's dyslexic, so they're going to have to speak slower for him. I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Alan does this word by word. I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare. When we get to the truth and nothing but the truth, he perks up. as he recognises that from the telly. Alan also talks like a pathetic, childish old man. Jackie, the clerk of the court, I'm going to call it clerk of the court, I forgot the official terminology, says, do you have your statement? Alan says, I was going to give an oral statement. And Jackie says, no, you confirm your original statement. We've just been through this process, remember, with Frankie. So Frankie had his original statement and just said, yes, that's my statement. And they ticked it off and we moved on. Alan has seemed to have forgotten this and says, no, I want to do an oral statement. She says, no, you need to confirm your statement. So we've got a little bit of a, when proceedings are happening, Alan's not understanding them. It's a repeating theme and they have to explain it to him. Alan says, I can't find it, like a pathetic old man. He says, I didn't know. Like he plays up this character. I'm saying pathetic old man not to be rude, but he plays up this character. He goes, he says it himself. Oh, I'm a pensioner and I don't know what's going on. And Jackie says, you're going to have to find it. So Alan struggles to find it. Gervais, Frankie's lawyer, is helpful and tells Alan that he's been sent it twice. And the last time he got sent it was on the 19th of March. So if you look in your emails folder, you'll be able to find it under 19th of March. Alan says, this is what you get with a litigant in person who's got dyslexia, I suppose. While the court has to waste its time, Alan tells them, this is what you get with a litigant in He doesn't say the full term either. He says litigant. He just says litigant. He goes, this is what you get with a litigant with dyslexia, I suppose. Alan eventually finds it and says, I've got it. And then he blames the slow internet. So it's not his fault, it's the slow internet, as he's playing victim. Alan is in an official room with plugs behind him, like I said, like a hospital. When he says the slow internet here, like I said, I don't know where, that's why I've made that note, is because I don't know where he is. It seems weird. It's like he's blaming the location, and I don't know what the location is. The judge asks, finally, is that true? The, his statement. And Alan says, yes, I can confirm it's true. The judge says, you can make submissions later on. Alan says, I've got an oral statement. Back to front there. Right? The judge tells him, you can do it later on. And Alan says, I've got it now. The judge says, if it's your argument, you will get a chance if there are missing facts. And Alan says, we're not retrying the case now. These are just my thoughts, having seemed to have picked up what's being thrown down. The judge says, perfect, thank you. Alan says, skeletal, referring to the argument, skeletal argument. The judge asks Gervais if he's got any questions for Alan, and Gervais says, no, I've got no questions for Alan. So the judge says, okay, that stands as your evidence, your submitted statement. Now we move to submissions. Mr. Vinnicombe, I'm conscious you've just heard Frankie's answers. Do you want a break before we move on to you? Alan gets what he's saying when it's explained. Not first time, when it's explained, and says he does want the break. So we then take a 10-minute break. My God, it's hard work, isn't it? Alan's making it hard work, I'll tell you. He's making it hard work. During the 10-minute break, cameras go off, so I don't know what anyone does. I think the idea is that Frankie's just said new stuff, potentially. Alan's asked questions. Frankie said new stuff. Maybe Alan needs time to factor that in before he moves on to his submission of the evidence. Which, if something's come up in the questioning, now is his time to submit it as evidence. I think that's the process. What do you think of it so far? Rubbish. We resume. And DeWild explains that he will speak for 30 or 40 minutes, which surprises me. DeWild will go first. Submissions and replies. That's Gervais, the lawyer. DeWild, my lord, I intend to address 3 topics. The first is the harassment claim. The second is the general damages for libel. And the third, the court injunction. First, the court is invitee to order a stay of the claim. The claim was pleaded in 2 courses of action for defamation harassment. There's legal language and references of the bundle. A brief summary, the core of the defence, the publication is the core of the defamation. So a brief summary on what's at core of the defamation is the publication of conspiracy theories about the appalling crime. He targeted the claimant and members of the family, and that conduct on Mr. Vinnicombe's part is part of a wider unfortunate phenomenon. And here the judge references Alex Jones and Sandy Hook. He also references the case of Hibbert and Hall, the Manchester Arena bombing hoax, Richard D. Hall. The fact that he said it was a hoax, I'm not saying it's a hoax, Jesus. I did a video saying it wasn't a hoax and that Richard D. Hall's talking rubbish. But Gervais is making this wider point, references judgments deciding liability. And in that case, it was 45k. The Manchester Arena was part of a false narrative, a hoax, fake injuries, and he describes the Hall trial. And he says, in this case, it's an archetypal instance of a defendant harassing a victim of a high-profile claim by conspiracy theories about the nature of the crime. So Gervais in this moment explains, like I said earlier, Alan's gone on about, did you have a criminal record, and some pedantic thing about what I don't see, I don't know, something, yeah. And what Gervais is explaining here is it's not about whether this one video and this one thing that Alan said could be proven as true or not true. Like, Alan's got into his mind that if he can just prove his statements were true, everything goes away. But it's not that at all. It's this wider context. And like, this is where, listen, I've done YouTube videos about crimes on the internet. I did one yesterday. I took a bit of a step back, and I've, over last year I've been having a bit of a think, I don't want to be anything like Alan. Jesus, no. And I'm not here to be like Alex Jones or Richard D. Hall either. No. But when the barrister referenced those as part of this speech, like, the gravity of that, I was, do you know what I mean? Alan is now being put in with Alex Jones, Richard D. Hall, and other major conspiracy theorists who cause massive harm and emotional damage to victims. This is the conversation we're having. The judge asks, was the claimant involved in the crime? Because Alan's talking about a crime that happened, the infamous Watts case, and the judge asks, was the claimant, Frankie, involved in the crime? And Dewar says no, but the core is that Alan claimed that they know more, that the family know more than they're saying, and that they were involved in a cover-up. So Dewar makes it very clear, it's not just about this one statement, this thing he said here or that. It's about this whole concept that the family know more and that they're involved in a cover-up. The judge says, we have the judgment of the harassment liability. He's not entirely clear from the judgment jurisdiction. We need an impact on the victim to find harassment. The claimant wasn't in the jurisdiction. And we move into a conversation now about jurisdiction, which I'll read to you. And this is where, I think Alan hasn't really understood what we're doing in the process. Like, these are legal people now arguing about the legality of where the argument is being heard, how much it matters whether Frankie lives in America or England, if Frankie's impacted, because his jurisdiction is America and Alan's is England, and Frankie doesn't live in England. So does it matter if Frankie if you say that Frankie's a bad person, but nobody that Frankie knows hears you because he's in America and they don't hear it, but you tell someone in England and they don't know who Frankie is, does it matter? Is it important? They're talking about jurisdictions, and also whether you can sort of like, be accountable for things in different jurisdictions. So Duard says, we don't invite the court to award remedies due to jurisdiction. I can explain why this aspect should be stayed. There's 2 decisions. He talks about Shakila Rahman in the bundle. They do the reference. He talks about the line of authority stating it's necessary to prove the person is harassed. And then they talk about harassment and jurisdiction. They reference Richard Spearman. There's lots of noise as people bang around with their bundles as they're referencing these cases. The judge says... Duard says, the judge there says the same thing. The course of conduct has to have an effect on the claimant. The judge didn't go on to discuss how liability might be discussed outside of jurisdiction. The judge then questions it and says the tort of harassment, the apprehended breach. Duard says, I agree, it's not the liability, but the threat. The judge says there's a case of, and then he cites a complicated number, where he says it looks like an injunction was granted, but the key point was that the person had business in the UK. Then they discuss the jurisdiction and whether this is defamation. The judge says there's no suggestion the claimant wants to come to England, so the stay could last years. And if he wanted to visit, then what? So they're arguing about how long the stay, which, it's legal terms. I'm not 100%, so I won't say. If you think you know what it means. How long this hangs over this and where it hangs over it, I guess. Claims are resolved on the basis of the stay, so this allows the claimant to revisit the action if it continues. So Duard argues that if Alan keeps doing it, we can come back here and pick up, yeah? So you need to leave this stay over it, like this length of time over it or something. The judge says, thanks, you have the judgment in your favour. What would you have said at the summary judgment, that there was no harassment within the jurisdiction? And Duard says, no, we don't accept the locations would be a bar for relief. To be a bar under the Act, it's the place of wrong that establishes liability. The judge says for harassment, and Duard says, this is choppy waters. The stay's a compromise to keep this in play in case Alan does it again. So they've discussed that. That's one of the things they wanted to discuss. I don't have complete, full legal hold over it. I don't really, my guess is that they're talking about how long this is, and as they talked about, jurisdictions. So it needs to stay in existence. The stay needs to be long so that Alan can't do it again. Duard says the second topic is damages, seeking award for general and aggravated in regard to these 5 videos. There's no defence. It was struck out, and the question for the court is this reasonable, not extravagant or impossible? And the words are set out in the claim. I think the judge asks for the words. I mean, I've put this as a big quote here, so I can't remember if it's the judge who reads this or if it's the lawyer. Stay with me. Listen, we're going to get on to the bit where Alan has a massive rant. He hasn't done his massive rant yet. Okay, so they now read this bit out, and this is like part of the claim. This is where I think it's really important, yeah? This is really important as well. Alan said, this is what this is what Alan said that's bad. Okay, this is what Alan said that's bad. This is the defamation. This is Frank Rusick Jr., and obviously in the video he's got him on the screen. This is Frank Rusick Jr. that's inciting hatred for years. I've had to move house. I've been sent death threats. This vendetta has to stop. You employed a whole bunch of crazies. You, Frankie, have put me in danger. You're stalking me. You've put my life in danger. You've broken the Communications Act and my life... ... Then they list the crimes Alan accused Frankie of. We submit that these are false complaints and harassment against the defendant. They say they were very substantially published to the viewers, numbering in 5 figures. The judge asks, is that publication in the UK that we're concerned with? And the lawyer says yes. The judge then asks if the figures for the videos, would they be in England, Wales, or globally? If it's 2,600 viewers, it's a question of jurisdiction. Duard says that we didn't get a disclosure from the defendant, so we don't know where these views were, because YouTube will tell you the stats, won't it? So are they mainly in England or are they mainly in somewhere else? But they don't know because Alan didn't tell them. He didn't do the disclosure. So they agree that you can discount the cross-publication. So about a quarter are likely to be outside the jurisdiction. Now, I know that Alan's going to probably, when he understands what's being said later on, he's going to get cross about this. Because what they're saying is that the majority of Alan's views are in Great Britain. So treat it as such. Okay, some people are watching around the world, but Alan's in UK. Most people are watching from the UK. And I think Alan would actually contest that, but he didn't. So, or he did a little bit later, but it didn't make any sense. Big up Dry Spell. Thank you very much for the membership.
Torture the battery boy.
We then talk about the number of subs. The judge says the subs number was 67,000. Alan had 67,000 subs. But that's not the number who watched the videos. Duard submits this is also a live component. So Alan recorded these videos from his live streams, and we don't have a record of how many people watched the live streams. Alan aggregated these things together in videos and then republished them. So this number's a minimum, and some percentage will be overseas. So we're looking for general damages. The evidence of distress and harassment is given in the bundle, and the peace of mind has been destroyed by the defendant's publications. So there we've had it laid out by them. You know, and it's laid out. I mean, I didn't, you know, this is for the Remedies hearing. We're not trying to try the case, but they're explaining the seriousness of it, aren't they, for the Remedies hearing. And what we've got is we've got Sandy Hook, we've got Manchester Hoax, and like, when you think about it, you know, Frankie's in chat and he's a real person, and I think a lot of you sort of like, I don't know, you, no offence, us, a lot of us, like, Alan's an idiot on YouTube, and like, you know, it's a small weird niche thing, isn't it? And you know, if you're telling someone at the pub that Alan's done this and that, like, they don't know who Alan is, and it's a bit weird. But like, in the big picture, it's actually really big and serious, and it's taken on this, like, you know, the way the legal, I said this before, you know, these legal people, they look at this very, very serious crime case from America, you know, like a very serious one, up there with Sandy Hook, and you know, it is, isn't it? It's like a really tragic, serious, horrific crime case, and you've got this man in the UK who's telling all these lies and making up all these stories and blaming the victims, actually blaming the victims for attacking him. And they've likened it to Richard D. Hall's Manchester Arena hoax, and they've likened it to Alex Jones' Sandy Hook, and those were both very serious cases where, like, you know, the people that were doing the bad thing, like Alex Jones had to pay millions. Do you know what I mean? Like, so they lay it all out, don't they? Like this, and the numbers who watch the videos, and the numbers of who's overseas, and these numbers, you know, they're put forward as like, this is a serious thing. And it's ironic, isn't it, that Alan was always, I think, inflating his numbers at points, but Alan was always so proud of these numbers, and yet that's the thing that's come back to bite him the most, is, you know, this is now really big and serious. Do you know what I mean? The judge says, in terms of reputation, publication within the UK, I'm concerned with the reputation in the UK. Does it matter if people are based overseas? And Duard says, yes, but the general principle is that the publications can both make and destroy at the same time. This is a really interesting point. They can alert people to their existence and damage them. So what Duard says is that Frankie might not live in England. So if I said to the man at the bus stop, Frankie Rusek's a bad chuffer, it doesn't hurt Frankie because he doesn't live in England. Yeah, like, we're not defaming someone who people don't even know about and isn't a big, like, you know, if you live in America and you're saying it to the Americans, oh, they know him, they're going to think bad things about him, they know him. But the lawyer makes a really good point, is that Alan's introducing people to Frankie Rusek, and the introduction is he's a bad chuffer, so it both makes and destroys his reputation at the same time. It's not that Frankie already had a reputation as being something, and Alan's a tactic, and now it's bad. You know, my business is destroyed because Alan attacked me. Because Alan could have argued that the people in England didn't even know who he was. So I can't damage his reputation if he doesn't even have a reputation. But the argument is that you've created his reputation, and it's terrible. You know, you've both made and destroyed him at the same time in the minds of the new people you're introducing him to. So the judge says, can I take into account the different impact of being in the jurisdiction? And Duald says yes. Gervais explains we're not pursuing exemplary damages. So I think that's like, we're not looking for like, what's exemplary? Exemplary. To make an example out of him, isn't it? Serving as a desirable model, punishment. Yeah, it's punishment. We're not pursuing punishment damages, essentially. We're not trying to make an example out of Alan and get a load of, like, we're not looking for $200,000 just to punish him so that we can, you know, beat him with a stick. Like, we actually want real, he said the defendant actually did profit, and it was trauma turned into entertainment. So we're seeking aggravated damages. So Gervais explains that this isn't just an argument, people online trying to hit someone with a stick. This was big profits of trauma turned into entertainment, and that's why they're seeking aggravated damages. The second feature is the way the defendant defended the claim, and he explains that Alan fought the claim very vigorously at every turn and tried to slow it down. And, you know, we know that because Alan's talked about it on the internet, hasn't he? I'm going to drag my heels. Alan also denounced the claimant for pursuing the claim. So once Frankie had said, I'm going to sue you for defamation, Alan started attacking Frankie for suing him. The judge wants an example, so Gervais looks for one. Gervais finds an example where Alan has stated, I'll make you write 1,000 letters, I'll drag it out, and states not only has it been obstructive and difficult, he celebrated this publicly. And like, I remember covering that on stream. Do you remember that? How ironic that it comes back to bite him like this. The judge wants an example of Alan attacking the claimant for pursuing the claim. And by God, he's got one. I'll make you write 1,000 letters. I'll drag this out. I remember him saying, you know, if a letter's £1,000, I'll make you write 1,000 letters and you won't have the money for it. This big up Scrumpy Grannis. This gets better in a way, but it gets worse and better at the same time. But the irony, you know, the irony of this, like already we've got these big waving, like to me, I thought these were massive points. One is that Alan's been put up there with people like Alex Jones and Richard D. Hall and these big hoaxer conspiracy people. Like Alan thinks it's an argument about whether he said, she said, and I did this and you did that and I'm right and you're wrong. And the judge sees him as a fucking nutter going on about wild conspiracy and really hurting people. Yeah, so you've got that wider context. And then these ideas that the things that Alan so vigorously stated, and the main ones are about the gang stalker crew, right? Like these sort of things that he said, they came back in court as the reasons he was doing defamation. Like that is the defamation, saying that Frankie was attacking him with all these people. Frankie was behind all the stalking. Frankie was paying them to do it. Frankie had this, that. And like, so that's the reason for the defamation, yeah? And Alan, he said a lot of that. It's all he ever went on about, isn't it? It's obviously he's not talking about it now, but it's all he ever said. Constant. And it gets worse. It gets worse. When Alan has his little rant, we'll get to it. But it gets worse. And one of Alan's points of defence is the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard in my life. So the judge and Gervais then discuss this process of dragging it out. Gervais de Wilde states that the strategy's been borne out in the litigation. The appeal extended a whole year, with the defendant breaching that requirement. He was being extended opportunity after opportunity to correct his mistakes, repeatedly until he finally ran out of road. Quote, a further point set out in the judgment is that Alan, and he says told the court, he says Alan told the court he'd get a proper defence, but he didn't. But the way he says it, what I hear is Alan trolled the court. My ears picked up. I said, did you say Alan trolled the court? He didn't say trolled, he said told. But he's like, Alan trolled the court. He said he'd get a proper defence, but he didn't. It's consistent with what he said he'd do, dragging it out. So Alan saying that, we all said it would happen, didn't we? We all said that it wouldn't be in good faith with the court if you drag it out, and especially if you say it. So it was brought up in court and the judge agreed. Then they bring up the cross-exam that just happened. And de Wilde states, the cross-exam was aggravating. He was supposed to give us the questions in advance. The criminal record was not a point that we sued on. The cross-exam was used to further attack Frankie. The judge said, could the criminal record affect the damages? De Wilde says, and he references another case. A defendant can plead matters relied upon in mitigation damages, but they need to be connected to the claim. It's not a public inquiry into the claimant's character. There can be a plea for general bad reputation, but it's restricted and and needs to be pleaded, and Mr. Vinnicombe has not done that. Did you get that one? Quite right, Andrew. No respect. The only iota of respect, which was only there to say, to show that he's a good guy. Hey, court, look, I've condolences on your loss. Anyway, you fucking the condolences statement was just there so that Alan could start. I'm the good guy. It's such a nasty chuffer. Yeah, absolutely, not at all. But this really stands out massively to me. Is that they point out that this cross-examination was further aggravating. You know what I'm saying? Alan's thinking he's winning a point in the court. Alan's thinking he's getting him in on the cross-exam because he's proving he's got a criminal record or hasn't, or, if I get this proof of this, then I've won. They state the cross-exam was aggravating, making it worse. He was supposed to give us the questions in advance. Obviously he didn't, because he didn't know there was going to be one, did he? And he just made them up. The criminal record was not a point we sued on. It's not the case. The cross-exam was used to further attack Frankie. The facts about the criminal record, could it affect the damages? So we're talking about remedial damages. Could that affect it? Why did Alan bring it up? Could it affect it? And De Wilde states that, it could. In mitigation, you could bring up matters that affect it, the damages, but it needs to be connected to what we're suing them for. So because it's not connected, it doesn't matter, does it? And I think the judge just basically agrees with that. And then it's not a public liability inquiry into the claimant's character. This is about defamation that Alan's done. So it doesn't really matter if Frankie has gone and burned down the White House. I mean, God forbid, I don't want to say that, not saying that on don't get the agents coming around and kicking my door in. But, it doesn't matter if what Frankie's done. That's not what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss the defamation, really, aren't we? And and that there can be a plea for bad reputation. If someone is a really bad chuffer and they've done something really bad, you can bring that into it, but you have to do it properly. You have to plead it, and it's restricted, and so you have to do it with the right form, I guess, or the right, statement. And Alan hasn't done that. He's just sort of brought it up in questioning during mitigation, during Remedies hearing. So Gervais de Wilde basically throws out what Alan's saying about this criminal record stuff. He just essentially throws it out and explains to the judge, it's not really what we're here to talk about today. We haven't sued on it. We're suing on this wider, like I said, this wider context of claiming the family no more, claiming that people should be questioned, claiming that I've put that in, actually, I put that in, claiming the family no more, and that what we said earlier about there being a conspiracy, and that was it, a cover-up. Going on about there being a cover-up and that the family are involved in a cover-up. That was it. That they know what happened. He alleges that the family knew what happened, knew more than they're letting on, and they're covering it up. And that was what they were suing over. And that's a wider concept as well. And it's not about necessarily... Obviously, there's 5 videos of evidence. We're here to sue for something, so we brought you the evidence. But this is evidence of a wider pattern. So you're to assume it's just a little window into it, and it's been going on in all other ways. And the judge, I think, because we've already had the judgment, they've said, yeah, okay, yeah, you give us no, Alan's given us no defence, so we will accept that as evidence, and we will accept that that's the case. So it's not really about trying to prove what he said in this video is right or wrong about this one pedantic point. It's more about the whole body of work sort of thing, isn't it? And like, you can see that, can't you? You can understand that. That makes sense to everyone, I think. Like, and so the fact that he says, like, you know, that's not even the point we're suing on, and then sort of like legally explains that we're sort of just throwing that out then, yeah? It's not a public inquiry into the claimant's character. Mr. Vinnicombe hasn't pleaded general bad reputation, and these points can be relied upon in mitigation, but they need to be connected to the claim. The cross-examination was aggravating. It wasn't a point we sued on. We move to the next point, made by Gervais de Wilde, Frankie's lawyer. This is probably why you need a lawyer. Now I'm saying this, like reading it through like this is probably why it was a good idea to use a lawyer, isn't it? Like, Alan doesn't have anybody saying any of these things for him. He doesn't know what's happening. The third point is that there has never been an apology. There's never been an apology. The judge asks, is it suggested that he carried on repeating things on another channel? Gervais de Wilde says he's never accepted, he's not offered to repeat the allegations. After he was kicked off YouTube, he went to other platforms that have a less restrictive approach. Sorry, he's never accepted and not offered to not repeat. This must be my note taking. I apologise because I'm trying to write all this down. Basically says Alan has never offered to stop the allegations. After he was kicked off YouTube, he went on to other platforms that have a less restrictive approach. So moving over to Kick or Rumble didn't help him. It made him look bad. And the court understand that. They refer to them as other platforms that have a less restrictive approach. And there's a sense of like the bad smell in the room. The judge says, repeatedly reinforcing the same claims and allegations. What's this referring to? So Alan's been repeatedly reinforcing the same claims and allegations, and de Wilde makes it more clear. Yes, that's the broad point. Alan claims he has the right of free speech. And this shows he's unrepentant. Isn't it brilliant? You know, Alan went on this big tirade about free speech. I remember this because he did it while I was, I'd just come onto this sort of Alan story, hadn't I? I'd stumbled into him because of his plagiarism of my Nicola Bully content. And he started this campaign about free speech. Like this campaign he was going to run. And I think he kind of, what Alan's like in his delusional la-la land. I think he thought people would get behind him and, the free speech warrior. This is something I can champion. Like campaign about free speech. Because it mattered to him that he shouldn't be done for defamation. But all that stuff, that's gone into the file as repeatedly reinforcing the allegations. It's gone into the file as him being unrepentant. And he was unrepentant, wasn't he? He was unrepentant. Well, yeah, big ups. All that confidence until he reached the courtroom. He played this whole thing, right, like a meek little, sorry, Your Honour. Oh, Your Honour. I'll get you. Oh, can I make you a cup of coffee, Your Honour? Oh, you're so clever, Your Honour. Except when he was talking to Frankie, when he was rude and aggressive, like he thought he was in the courtroom. Someone said it in chat earlier. Perry Mason. He thought he was Rumpole of the Bailey. Completely inappropriate. And as we've seen, unrelated to the case. Like, what must the judge have been thinking? Alan made a big point to make some sort of point about Frankie. And then... Oh, big ups. Sorry, did Grumpy Granny give me a membership earlier? Big ups. Sorry, I missed that. Someone just alerted me to it. I do not want to be ungrateful. I am very grateful. Thank you. Apparently they got it gifted to themselves, which is... that's like winning the YouTube lotteries. Make sure you buy a lotteries ticket. Yeah, like Alan argued a point that isn't in relation to the claim. Like, do you remember? Alan didn't know what the videos were because he hadn't got a copy of them. Alan didn't really know what he was being sued for. And after he'd gone on about this point about this criminal record, they explained later that that's not really what they're arguing for. It's not what they're arguing about. So if they want, Alan can have that if he can prove that it makes a big of a difference, which it doesn't. And they just moved on from it. So, like, Alan spent his time bombastically acting like a wanker over things that don't make any difference and can't be submitted. And they told him repeatedly, we'll move on to submissions in a minute. We'll move on to submissions in a minute. So what do you think these people feel? You know, what do you think? Like, the lawyer and Gervais are very similar. Like, I noted, because I looked into this, the judge. I looked into the judge. Like, these people work in the legal profession. They're lawyers themselves, and they get to do some judging, don't they? Like, but, you know, when you think of, like, you know, if they're out for a beer and, like, all the lawyers are in the bar, you know, the bar that the lawyers go into, the judge and Gervais are similar sort of, like, one's a judge, so he's the high status in this room at the moment, but they both know all about the law. They've got all the files, you know, they've got things to chat about. They're similar sort of people, you know. And then you've got Alan on his own, no lawyer. This is another reason why really having a lawyer really helps. You know, they are on that level with them, and Alan's on the outside of this. He doesn't really understand what's going on, and they're sort of discussing, like, you know, like these big stroke things, like these important things about what's going to happen, you know, whether the money and all this. And Alan keeps throwing in these, like, curveballs, and they must think of him like, what the fuck are you doing? And they tell him, you know, this is not the time. This is not related to the claim. And he gets worse. He hasn't even had his big rant yet. He gets worse. The third point has never been an apology. He carried on other channels. He did his unrepentant big show about free speech. The judge asks, has he continued to make the same allegations on other platforms? And Gervais de Wilde says, we don't have the evidence of that today. And the judge says, but the statement says that it exists. And Gervais de Wilde says, well, we haven't gone through this is important as well, right? You think to yourself, oh, hang on, they haven't got the evidence. Alan, they're saying Alan kept saying it and Alan made this big stink. But because his channel got deleted, they haven't got all those videos. So if all your videos disappear, we can't do you for them then, can we? That's it. Alan gets away with that, doesn't he? No, not at all. Not at all. What they say is that we haven't gone through the exercise of making all that evidence, but Alan's prolific. So essentially, the judge accepts that because Alan constantly has been going on about it, and we've got 5 incidents already, we don't need to record all 500. Unless Alan can prove he's not been like that, like, we're going to just assume he is, because he has been over a long period of time. That's what we're suing him for. So the judge sort of, I think, makes the good point. And I think if they needed the evidence, and this is bearing in mind not for trying Alan, not for the trial. The trial's already happened. They've found him guilty. This is for how serious it is and how much money he's got to pay. Okay? But they're like, it's just an exercise. So if you want, I guess we could go and find more videos of Alan saying bad things. But, you know, and I know it's bad. And the judge, like, is like, I think, in agreement with that. It doesn't state it, but I think, you know, Gervais de Wilde's point makes sense. Alan's prolific. We haven't gone through the exercise of collecting them all. But then he states the Barron and Vine case. And here we get another case that's stated. Barron Vine? Isn't that Jeremy Vine? They might not know it in America, but in England there's a radio DJ called Jeremy Vine. And he rides around on a bicycle in London. So he's always on about road hazards and drivers. And, you know, some people don't like cyclists, do they? Get out the road, cyclist. And the cyclist's like, oh, this car nearly passed by me too close. And Jeremy Vine runs a talk show where they're talking about political issues and stuff. So he sued someone for defamation recently, and I can't remember what it was. I think someone called him a bike F-slur, rhymes with maggot. Someone called him the F-slur and he sued them over it. I think it was something like that. Don't quote me. But again, we're talking about a case now. They're bringing up another case for reference. And the case they're bringing up is one of the most high-profile slander, libel, whatever cases in the media recently. So again, we're getting this treatment of this. I mean, for once, Alan is getting elevated to the status he wished he achieved, which is this conversation with these big names. But only for the wrong reasons, yeah? He's getting lumped in with the worst, craziest conspiracy theorists who have caused the most harm. And now the people who have been made an example of for being dangerously slanderous and libelous to public figures. So the Jeremy, I think it's Jeremy Vine, is referenced. We get more. So the Baron Vine case gives the framework, he says. The next one, I don't know. Okay, he says Sutcliffe and something. He references a case about Sutcliffe. I don't know. Peter Sutcliffe? So turning to comparative cases, the first two are general and the second two are more closely related. The first is Turley. The claimant was an MP and got £75,000 because trade unions, or they said he was in trade unions, and it was an article that was read by 3,000 people. The next was a claim about something that was published, and then my sister arrives at the home. There was an interruption, the dogs and stuff, and I had to not listen to this little bit, so I don't know what happened with the next one. I'm going to tell you as well, after Alan gets ranting, there's a little moment that happens in my life, an interruption from the heavens. I'll tell you about it in a second. But I missed that next bit, but I come back and they're talking about Chris Packham. Now, Chris Packham, fraudulent fundraising, how he was awarded £90,000, 75 grand from the fraudulent fundraising and 150 publishees. So Chris Packham is a famous person in the UK. He's a wildlife presenter, and he is saving animals and stuff like that. And he goes out and does work, and some people really don't like him because you've got like a political thing about fox hunting, and he protects the foxes and he saves the wildlife, and some people are like, get out of the way, I want to build a road and stuff like that. So he's a contentious wildlife presenter in some way, but he did a case where he was awarded £90,000 damages because people suggested he was fraudulently fundraising, which is exactly what Alan suggested Frankie was doing. Fraudulently fundraising. He called him a fraud, and he called Cumming Davis frauds. They also reference Wilson, a 25k common factor being harassment, harassing a mother, publishing it on social media. Again, a high profile case where someone's published something on social media. I don't know exactly what this case is, this Wilson, but 25 grand was thrown around for harassment published on social media. So like these higher notoriety cases involving these more publicly known people, and Alan even argues this a little bit later, we'll get to. He's a public figure, not realising that goes against Alan. they're referencing these cases anyway, and like I said, it puts Alan in this echelon of really bad people, or people that have done something that's bad on a big scale. So, the claimant seeks £60,000 based on this. Not based on a loss of earnings. Comparators to reflect the three aspects: the good name, the distress, hurt, and the humiliation. The defendant published serious allegations of dishonesty and or criminal or pseudo-criminal allegations, and this was capable of giving rise to serious consequences. Dishonesty, allegations across a series of publications, and they were targeted and made to followers of the defendant. And then the last one was about code of conduct, and I got to say I missed what was being said because I didn't understand it. The judge asks, is there a draft injunction? So maybe the last one was about an injunction, because I think it's about the injunction, isn't it? And Duwald says no, but I can remedy that by looking at the prayer for relief. So they do a bit of looking, a bit of typing. Duwald says the court can restrict future publication, and at the time of the claim, the publications were ongoing. They were taken down, not by Alan. He was defiant. Finally, the defendant doesn't oppose the injunction. Alan says, they say for Alan, they say, Alan says he doesn't oppose a narrow injunction. He talks about a broad cross-platform injunction being disproportionate. And the judgment, they say, is not about the platform. It's about the statement. He's not to say it again. And that's that. So finally they make the point, or Gervais de Wilde is arguing to the judge, that they want this injunction on Alan. They want him to not be able to speak on it anymore. And Alan has, in some way, through the process, in his response maybe, said he doesn't mind not being able to speak anymore on YouTube, but he does mind a wide platform ban. He's fucking banned on YouTube, so he can't speak on YouTube, so it doesn't matter to him, does it? So he's offered that freely. oh, okay, I won't say it on YouTube anymore. But I want to be able to say it on Rumble, and I want to be able to say it on TikTok. And they've argued, no, I don't think so. And I think the judge will, I mean, we've got to wait and see. But I think the judge will agree that a wide platform ban is appropriate. It's Maine, isn't it? It's Maine. Mad. Sorry, it's mad. Really mad. Now imagine arguing to the judge that you agree that you should be banned from talking about this thing, but maybe you should be allowed to talk about it on TikTok. Just ban me from one platform, just YouTube, eh? Or just maybe let me talk about it on TikTok. We'll see. The judge might go for that. And that's that. So the judge then says, Mr. Vinnicombe, now it's your chance. Give me a minute. Give me a second. Are you ready for this? Oh my God, this is one of the moments of my life. And I'm only an outsider, an observer. God help. God, I believe in God. God help Frankie and his family. I believe God has helped them through some of this. Alan's already had the audacity to cross-examine Frankie in a way that wasn't appropriate, and has been logged by the by the claimant as further harassment live in court, essentially. Yeah. Alan, it's your turn. Alan says, first of all, from what the good barrister said, he's claiming damages to his name when... You won't believe this. Alan says he's claiming damages to his name when, and he gets his phone out. He gets his phone out on the Zoom call and he says, Your Honour, can you see this? Can you see this? Your Honour, can you see this? Like he's on his stream. And the judge says, I can't see that. If it's in the bundle, this bundle of evidence that they refer to, with the numbers, he says, I can't see that. If it's in the bundle, and Alan rambles about an accomplice to the murder, and that Frankie holds criminal records, and that Alan said he had a criminal record, and that's the reason all the money was given. And the judge says, that's not in the bundle, referring to whatever this, because Alan's saying and the judge says, that's not in the bundle. And Alan says it is, to the judge. He contradicts him. He says it is, but I can't find it. Anyway, the point is, Alan says to the judge says it's not in the bundle. And Alan goes, it is, but I can't find it. Anyway, the point is, this is this man who claims to have all these receipts. He's got his case. If only someone would let him hear it. He just, straight off, he's on his phone. Have you seen this? The judge says, is it in the evidence? And Alan's like, yeah, it is. And the judge says, I don't think it is. And he's like, yeah, it is. Anyway, let's move on from that. Alan starts to get in, you know what Alan's like with his ranting? Alan is in his rant at this moment. He rambles about this stuff. And the judge says, that's not in the bundle. Alan says it is, but I can't find it. Anyway, the point is, he swore an oath to say that he didn't have a criminal record. And then he just said that he did have one. How can you believe anything he says? How can you believe him? He said he just has parking fines. You're just believing Frankie. You're just listening to DeWild saying something off a video that doesn't even exist. You're listening to DeWild, I quote, AIing something off a video that doesn't even exist. You're making it into a big thing that I did this and that, and it's unproven, and we haven't even had a trial. I've written in brackets, he is ranting. There's more. Now about damages. I haven't done anything to him. He's done more to me. I've had bricks through my window through his supporters. And you're listening to this like it's the truth. He's done evidence on a technicality. And they're looking at him. And that's my brackets. They're looking at him. The judge and the barrister are looking at him. Like, you know, like, they're thinking this, you know, we've explained it to you. It's got to be in the thing, and you got to do the process, and this isn't the trial, and, you know, and they're looking at him, and I'm just thinking, my God. He says, Chris Watts had a mistress. And we just had a study group. It's called Crime Channels. I never wanted to talk to Frankie. In his rant, he says, God rest her soul, he says, Shanann was blamed for murdering her children and I vindicated her. He says, I'm a CCTV expert and I found the shadows. I had a massive number of people believe me. Rourke said they died in the house and people bombarded Rourke with Alan's evidence, with my evidence, and they had to go and tell the DA, and I took them to the officials and I showed them that he took them to the oil field and killed them, and I vindicated Sharon, and he was praising me. Frankie was praising me, and then he turned on me, and I don't know why he turned on me. He's a public figure hating on me, and I can prove it. Give me the chance. Everything they said is AI quotes. There's no proof, it's just words. I don't believe words. I trapped him with his conviction. I can't do it like Alan. There's a lot of things I can do better than Alan. I can't do that like Alan. Alan was shouting angrily the exact defamation that he's up before the court. We're not trying the case now. He's been found guilty of the defamation, no? So now we're trying to find out how serious this is and whether Alan's the sort of person that needs, you know, serious penalties, or if he's respectful and sad and like he pretended to be at moments. And he's shouting the defamation in the court. You see, like, it absolutely blows my mind. And this is actually one of my favourite things that Anna's ever said. I need to put it on a t-shirt. Everything they said is AI quotes. There's no proof, it's just words. I don't believe words. He was in full flow, and at this point, right, what happened, and you can check it on the the weather app if you want. The sky darkened. It was a lovely sunny day, actually. Today was a lovely sunny day. There's a window. The sky darkened while Alan was in full flow of this rant. I was taking the notes. I wrote them down. And hailstones started to fall. It's mid-March. It's late March now. And it's springtime in the UK. So you do get some spring showers. You know, sometimes this happens. But it's not extraordinary that you would see hail. You know, it's not out of the world. It's not, you know, it never happens. But the sky darkened and hailstones just started to fall, like rattling on the window. And Alan's in full flow, doing his rant. And the sky's dark outside and this hail just starts falling. Like these thousands of these little tiny white hailstones. I can feel emotional now just thinking about it. And so what I did was I've still got the headphones on so I could still hear him going. But I stopped taking notes and I just went outside and sort of, I don't know if you'd call it praying. I don't know if you call it praying, but, you know, I felt like I was in an extraordinary moment Like, just like a few years. This isn't about me. This is not about me. But a few years ago, I was in this exact room. My nan was living here, dying here, and I was caring for her. And then after she died, I like decided to start being a streamer because I'd watched a bunch of them while I was in lockdown, and I just thought I'll give that a bit of a go. Seems like a bit of fun. Started doing a stream every day. Stumbled upon different subjects. Somehow here we are. Like, I'm outside in the hail. The sky is dark. It's blasting down this hail, and in my head, in my ear, Alan's in his court thing doing his rant, and he said these words about Shanann. He brought up the oil field. I can't, like, I'm not a person who's ever covered this case. I'm not one of the early, but I totally understand how the people that feel empathy with the family, obviously I feel that. It just, yeah, the sky darkened, and this hail, this hail came down. You can believe what you want to believe if you want. You can believe what you want to. Or you're going to, aren't you? You're going to believe what you want to believe. I mean, when I say that, I mean not about the case and defamation stuff. I mean about God and like heaven. But if you want some sort of sign, people like give me a sign. It was like that. Like the sky darkened and this hail fell, and I was compelled to just leave the computer and just go and stand and be within the world and the nature and feel the, not rain on my face, but the hail. Yeah, make of it what you will. Make of it what you will. But for me, it was a very don't know if I want to call it spiritual moment. For me, it was a moment that I'll remember. I took a little photo of myself, but I look stupid because I'm outside in my drive just getting battered with hail. So, but like, it's not like the hail makes you feel, oh, I'm getting battered with hail. Like, it's not that. It's like reality of nature. Like, you can feel the force of nature, like the power there. That everything can change in a second. And it reminded me as well, I don't know if this is relevant, but I should say it because it's in my mind. It reminded me of how I make this little analogy sometimes about, sometimes people talk about people being snowflakes, and this isn't about politics or anything like that, but, good, nice, kind people are often downtrodden. Frankie referred to himself as being doormatted by Alan. People can be kind and they can be nice, and they're referred to as like weak and sometimes snowflake. I know that's got political connotations, so I'm not, but snowflakes or whatever. But like, I've made this analogy before, like, you can be one drop of rain, you can be one little soft, delicate drop of rain, but you put thousands of drops of rain together and it's a storm. When it snows, it's beautiful and it's soft and it's delicate, but if you get hit with an avalanche, hail's there for a short time. Like, after 30 seconds, once it happened, the hail melts. Like, it literally, because it's a sunny day, it's warm, like the hail just melts away and it's like it never happened again. This thing was a crowdfunded process. I'm talking to whomever, a group of people. I'm talking to you, but something's brought people together. There's two sides to it. There's bad people as well. Thankfully, some of them are dead now. Like, sorry, that sounds really awful, but like, there were some really horrible people saying some horrible things, and we don't have to listen to them anymore. But there are, there's bad people on another side of it in a way. But my conviction is that the gathered good is much more powerful, much more strong. Sometimes it requires a bit of, I don't want to say effort. I do want to say effort, because there's been a lot of effort behind the scenes on the parts of the people that have pushed this far, the family. There's been a lot of effort that they've had to put in at a time in their life where I'm sure it's been very difficult to just find the effort to keep going in general. That effort is commendable, really commendable. sometimes things, I don't want to say timing. Someone once said, some things happen for a reason, and I'm not quite saying what I want to say there. What I really mean is that hail happens because the cloud hits a certain temperature at a certain time. Like, the conditions have to be right, is what I kind of mean. The conditions have to be right. And when things are right, then they happen. But you've got to have faith. And this has been a really long process. But when things come together, when they're right, dramatic change can happen. I don't know. It hailed. The sky darkened and the hail came down. And I took it as some sort of special moment. And if you want to say message, if you want to believe what you want to believe, I don't know. But that happened. So my heart goes out to the family, and my love goes out to Shannon and the children, and I hope one day you will get to see each other again, sort of thing. Yeah. Then I had to go back inside and continue writing this down. Alan continues. Why me? I only got 6,000 views. There's other YouTube channels doing the Watts case, and they get millions of views. I only did my right to reply videos, and my channel was removed. I'm no longer publishing harm to this man. All this is based on statements that have not been tested. Netflix, on their side, they've got Netflix, and I'm just a little man. That's a true statement. Mr. Watts destroyed his life. I just said that the mistress needs to be questioned. This is an ongoing campaign. 6 years. I've had no contact with the family. I haven't got any money. I've got a rented house. This man has come from America to crucify me in my own country, which is like an elevation of the defamation. Yeah? Like, you can see how weird this is as well, can't you? Like, they've explained just a minute ago what it is that Alan's done that's so serious. What now? You want that one? They've explained to Alan what it was that he was doing. It's not about this pedantic point about whether someone's said exactly this or you were truthful or honest about that, and we'll come to, but it's about this wider scope. It's about these accusations of the family and these bigger pictures, these broader brushstrokes. And Alan repeats one and elevates it to another level. This man has come from America to crucify me in my own country. So we could reopen another case of defamation right there then, yeah? And that's, they're in the process of saying to the judge, we'd like you to take this very seriously because we think Alan might keep doing it. Alan does it to the judge as part of his big rant. He talks about jurisdiction, money and costs. Alan continues. At this point, I can't understand why he's doing this. It's exactly... Oh no, I've written this, sorry. Alan doesn't say this. I've written this. At this point, I can't understand why he's doing this. It's exactly what they accused him of. There's someone saying something. Alan loses track. So someone says something, like maybe it's the court person or the judge or some other voice says something, and Alan loses track, and then he gets straight back on it, and the judge comes on the screen briefly when this voice is heard. So maybe someone in the judge's office has said something, oh, sorry judge, do you need to open the door or something, and the judge looks completely lost. Alan says, thank you for listening to me. So the judge, he's trying to gather his thoughts. He says, thank you to listening to me, as if this is finally someone who has given Alan the chance to put his case forward. Finally, Alan has got through to a man who will listen to him. That other judge was a woman, wasn't she? And Alan obviously didn't like her, but this man has given Alan the floor, and Alan is allowed to speak. And they are just letting him speak. So Alan seems to think that this is going well. And he says to the judge, thanks for listening to me. You know, thanks for listening to me. He then says, the videos, they just AI'd, copied and quoted to you, don't exist. I don't believe it. It's wrong what they're doing to me. He says, in the questions, I proved he has a criminal record. If I prove that, how can you believe everything else he said is not the truth? He doesn't tell the truth. He's on YouTube. He doesn't. It's more. If he goes, he's on YouTube trying to get people to come after me. He remains active on YouTube, and he raised money from the public to come and get me. The idea of impecunious comes up. I think Alan just says the word impecunious as part of it, because at this point, Alan is slurring his words as well. Like, and he's saying words that don't really exist at some point. You know how he does when he goes on one, but he's like really in flow. So I've written the word impecunious. He says, he's raised money. I don't want to say illegally. That's why I say that they say that I say they gave him money. Alan's ranting again that he didn't get a trial. Everything this man has said should be treated with caution. He will lie on the Bible. It's an assumption. He hasn't proven a thing. Alan lists something, but it's impossible to understand him. Alan says, I'm on a phone. He's got Netflix. Sorry. You're laughing at chat. Now I see it as funny, but at the time I was like, I can't. I'm trying to furiously touch type, and Alan's going. It's not easy. I can't list everything he says. I can't understand everything he says. And at the same time, while he's doing that, my brain is saying, why aren't you recording this? Like, it's a crime, yeah, to record it. But wouldn't you, like, how long can, like, is prison that bad? Like, my brain is saying to me, like, you maybe should find out how many years in prison you might get for recording and broadcasting this rant, because for comedy value, it's really high up there. And if prison's this bad and comedy's this important, maybe for the comedy, I didn't record it, but, you know, my brain's going like, this is bizarre. Alan's going. He says, I'm on a phone. They've got Netflix. This was personal. I have to be shut down. And I've commented, Alan's slurring. The judge asks him to refer to the case. The judge notices that Alan's like, because he's speaking so fast, his words aren't coming out properly and different little words are being missed. And so the judge asks him, can you refer to the case? And Alan says something about Sutcliffe versus Prestram. So Alan actually, when directed, has got his ChatGPT out and he's referring to a case. Sutcliffe versus Prestram. Damages must be modest and proportionate, he says. But Alan can't read properly as he's in full rant. They asked for 30 when they had exemplary. They admit that. Exemplary instead of exemplary. They asked for 30 when they had exemplary. They admit that. So now he's getting back onto the thing and they start looking through papers, like the legal people start looking for... what he's saying is that Frankie initially asked for 30k. But now, in the hearing, they're upping it to 60k. And that's not right. So now we're getting to an actual point. The judge says he can see that. And Alan says again, in full flow, now they're asking for more money. I'm a pensioner. It's a money grab and I don't have money. I wanted security of costs. The only injustice is that he agreed... Sorry, the only injunction I agreed to is that I won't mention his name again. So now he contradicts that he agreed to the injunction, which obviously through his process that he's done, I don't know if he realises he has agreed to it, but he says, the only injunction I agreed to is that I won't mention his name again. I'm dyslexic. So the judge reads the injunction for him. Alan says, I agree. I don't want to mention his name again. And the judge says, sorry, I interrupted you. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. The judge says, sorry, I interrupted you. And Alan just picks up. I'm an old man living on a pension. I'm getting annoyed. I don't want to say anymore. It's taken 6 years out of my life and they haven't proven anything. And the judge says, because of the summary judgment, I have to accept their figures. You didn't give a defence. Not in that tone. After all that, and like I've given you the highlights there. Alan said more sentences. At one point I went outside and stood in the hail and just let it wash over me while it was happening. Like, it was one of the most insane performances I've ever seen by a human being in a situation. Like one of the most insanely inappropriate performances. I say performance because it's like a toddler acting up. Like he was like, this is my chance. If there's anything I've got to say, I better leave it on this table right here. And he went through the fucking list. I'm surprised Sex Mad Val didn't get a mention. He went through the full list as if he was the victim, and he was slurring, like I say, he was, like he has no comprehension of how I'm bad sometimes, but he has no comprehension of how he's perceived or what he's doing. But in his mind, he was winning. This is the weirdest fucking thing about this. I swear, in his mind, it was like, this judge finally, this man, because the other one was a woman, this man is going to let me have my say. And, like, what I'm saying makes loads of sense. So I must be looking good. Like, I swear that was what was going on in his mind. Because the judge says, I'm sorry that I interrupted you. Alan continues. The videos don't exist. They're just making things up. So the judge says, because of the summary judgment, I have to accept their figures. You didn't give a defence. Alan picks up. Like, he's arguing with the judge now. Essentially arguing with the judge. He says, the videos don't exist. They're just making things up. How can you believe it? They can't prove it. And this is so weird because we're not at the stage of the trial where we're doing the defence and the trial, are we? Like, they've already proved it. The court has accepted it. Alan has not submitted a defence. So now it doesn't matter. We're talking about whether you're going to have to pay a lot of money. But he's saying to this judge, how can you believe it? They can't prove it. They don't have the videos. They've just got transcripts. The judge says, as I said, because the defence was struck out, I take the position. I can decide if they're entitled to remedy, and what remedy, and what's your position on that? And Alan says, his reputation was discussed across many forums. And the judge says, thanks. That was very helpful. I know it's not easy to be litigant in person. Like, Alan sort of peters out, like his reputation was discussed across many forums, and the judge sees that we're getting nowhere. But the judge is very kind. Like, the judge has got a background in human rights, yeah. And I'll tell you what, I'll give the judge a massive feather in the cap here, because I'm not as big a man as the judge in this case. Like, I suppose he's in official capacity, isn't he? But the judge refrains from any sort of personal judgment. He treats Alan with respect. He, he refuses to sneer at him. Do you know what I mean? Which is something that we easily do. Like, I straight away. That's the first thing I did, is treat Alan with contempt, sneer at him. But the judge, because it's human rights, isn't it? You've got a right to trial. You've got a right to have your say. You've got a right to be treated like a human being by the court. They're not to judge you as a piece of shit. That comes by society later. But the court is, going to be. Well, it's going to be the court, isn't it? So, like, he says to him, thank you. I know it's difficult being a litigant in person, because you can see Alan's getting upset. And Alan says, I'm just pleased to get my story out to somebody who listens. Like him and the judge are like in the locker room having played a game of squash. You know, arm around him. I'm just glad you're on my side. He's just told you, Alan, that he's not going to be taking anything you've just said into consideration. It's about the monies. And Alan's just like, yeah, I'm just glad to get it off my chest to a fellow man who listens. Like the sexism drips out of it as far as I'm concerned. I wonder if Susie was watching, you know, the judge that did the actual judgment, you know, of whether he was guilty or whatever. Like, I wonder if she was watching him when he was, because Alan's basically just trying to butter up this judge. The judge says the claim form was for 30k. He's now asking DeWild. So Alan's had his big rant, and the judge is putting to DeWild, you know, what he feels is the point of Alan's rant that they can discuss. The claim form was for 30k. And DeWild says, I've got problems hearing him. So I've got problems hearing DeWild. But he says the court just has jurisdiction. He quotes some numbers to allow a larger sum than asked in the claim form. So he talks about another case. I think it's Gately or Gately. 1001. He says the court does have jurisdiction to allow a larger sum than is asked in the claim form. The judge says, on what basis? Like the adults talk now, and we get back to a grown-up conversation. On what basis? DeWild says the basis is that having considered some of the seriousness of the allegations, the extent, in more detail, publications do merit a higher reward. And the judge says, is there something particular? DeWild, the statement of value does not limit. Haraff versus Stand for Peace. And he references another case. Basically a case where someone asked for 10 grand, but they got 140 because the court said it was. So, and that's me saying it like that. They said it in quite normal legal language, and I was like, wow, they got 140. They only asked for 10. The judge says, what's the relevance of the figure on the claim form then? Is it irrelevant? And at this point, it really seems like, I think I'm okay saying this, it feels like DeWild is advising the judge, and the judge is accepting DeWild's expertise in this. You know, he says, what's the relevance of the figure on the claim form? Do I just ignore it? Almost like, you know, what should I do here? But, you know, it's the argument, isn't it? It's the legal. It's like, you know, and DeWild is not disreputable like Alan, is he? So he says, it's not relevant to your determination, no. And the judge says, I don't know the answer. Could be said to be unfair on the defendant if one puts the case without amending and then seeks the higher figure. And DeWild says, no, it's in the nature. This is subject to considerations that are not known at the time of the consideration is made. It's a very serious allegation to suggest that false evidence created by AI has been put before the court, and I reject that. So earlier in his rant, as we heard, Alan, and this, like I said I'm going to put it on a t-shirt. Alan doesn't believe words, certainly not ones that are invented by AI, and somehow he's got it into his head that they've invented this with AI. And the irony is that Alan does all of his stuff with AI, doesn't he? And we'll come to it. They have used AI to do transcripts, but it doesn't mean that AI's invented it. And it's so weird because Alan just recently did a Madeleine McCann episode where he used AI to regurgitate the translations that have already existed. It's so weird. But they state, you know, Alan in court today has said that Cohen Davis, reputable solicitors, have used AI to fabricate evidence, and Alan's put that before the court. And they obviously reject that claim, and Alan hasn't brought any evidence of the claim. Like, he's going to make it worse for himself. The videos were all available on the YouTube channel. AI was used to generate the transcripts, but in addition, a lawyer watched the videos, and it's highly opportunistic for Alan to say they're just not there anymore. They've been taken down because Google agreed with the complainant. Sorry. DeWild continues, they've been taken down because Google agreed with the complaint that Alan was harassing. Now, I don't know, I'll let them have that if it's true. They said it in court, didn't they? So I'm not going to argue they're telling a lie in court. But I like to think that I got Alan banned for being homophobic. Maybe we can both have a little, you know, go on that. Maybe you can have it one day and I'll have it on Thursday. Because I did report him for being homophobic, and it wasn't long after that he got banned. And, like, you know, how many strikes does it take? I'd like to claim a bit of it, but if they're going to say in court that they definitely got banned by Google, if they didn't, again, they didn't submit any evidence of it yet. I'm not going to say they're lying though. Like, we're just having a bit of a bun fight over who got Alan banned, but I'm only doing it as a joke. Like, I don't need to have any. Do you remember the episode at the time? I made a very big point to say it was all you lot that got him banned. No, it was a group effort, wasn't it? It wouldn't have happened like with one thing happening. It had to be like a part of a process, and you know, it was a group effort, wasn't it? And he did get banned, and I did take the credit. I like it if he thinks I did it. I like that idea, so let me have a bit of that. But they said Google did it, and because they agreed with Alan being the harasser. Duard says Alan gave his own evidence, but the court is right to state that there's no dispute regarding the views. The criticism is that Frankie can't prove the evidence, but Alan's not given any contradictory evidence, and Frankie swore and gave testimony. The judge says, "Do you want to commit to the criminal Do you want to comment to the criminal record on only traffic offences?" Duard says, "I accept that Frankie changed his answer, but the court can take into account the context of the cross-examination by the person who's been harassing him. Frankie was guarded and defensive, but ultimately gave a clear and honest response." The judge says that he will produce a written judgment that will be sent out to the parties. They can make submissions in writing regarding costs, and that will be a few weeks. Oh no! Everyone's going to be cross now. Are you all cross with that? Everyone's going to be cross now. It's going to be a few weeks before you find out the financials. Sorry, I should have said it at the start. Headline, I can't tell you the exact answer at the end. You can see why, I guess. The judge is going to take all this in. They're going to go away. It's going to be a few weeks. And then they're going to come back with their judgment. And by God, they've just sat through a trial like no other. They've had the defamation itself repeated back by the defendant as part of his mitigation for the damages. So I think it's going to go badly for Alan, but is there anything else? And Mr. Vinnicombe asks meekly, Alan, of all, like, you know what he's like, you know what Alan's like, yeah, but he plays the like meek is the word, meek. He plays the part of this victim. It's victim, isn't it? It's playing the victim. He plays this meek victim at the end. And he says to the judge, he goes, because the judge is just like, shut this down. He's like, okay, we're done now. This is it. We're done. Right? And Alan goes, can I make a small response? And the judge says, basically allows him the floor for a second. He says, okay, yeah. And Alan says, do you use AI, Judge? I've got to keep a straight face. And the judge says, yeah. Yes. And Alan says, AI, it makes mistakes. I'm saying they were taken out of context from AI transcripts. I dispute the figures. They were 6k each. The family supported me to start with, and the criminal records, he did change his answer. And that's all I want to say. Like, there's a pause, because Alan just did it again. Like, there's a pause. Like, the judge allowed him the floor and said, yeah, I used, like, you could hear it in his tone, yeah, I use AI. Where are we going with this? And Alan just has an outburst where he does 4 of the topics again. And the judge thanks him. The judge says, thank you. Thank you. And Alan says, can I ask? You've never seen anything like this. You've never seen anything like this. Alan says, can I ask how you summarised and work it out? And the judge says, it'll all be in the judgment, as in, we're done here. Just shut up. And Alan says, and you've got full control? To the judge. You've got full control? And the judge says, yes. And Alan, grovelling, now, he might as well get off his chair and go, oh, Mr. Judge. He says, thanks, as a dyslexic person. Disconnect. The judge doesn't fuck about. He goes. The judge disconnects. And the judge is gone. But Alan's like, at the very end, he's like saying to the judge, Are you in charge of this? Oh, thank God for that, mate. Oh, I'm glad. Like, you can feel it coming out of him. And he's like, oh, thanks as a dyslexic person. And disconnect. But he really did grovel at the end to this, and it felt like, again, I'm repeating myself now, but it felt like Alan was clearly not happy with the first judge, the woman and he thinks that this man, like, it was a sense of like earlier in the thing as well, he said that this man from America has come to attack me, and at one point he said, in my own country. Maybe I didn't quote him exactly, but at one point he said, in my own country, I'm being attacked. And I feel that Alan seemed to try and build a rapport with the judge, or well, not a real one. He thought he was building a rapport with the judge by being a grovelling, snivelly, cowardly victim. And at the very last word he had on it was thanks as a dyslexic person. And then they cut it off. And that'll be his last words on it, won't it? Because then the next thing will be the judgment. They did say that Alan would be allowed to submit a written submission regarding costs. I don't know what a submission is. But he's allowed to, like, both parties are allowed to make a submission if they want regarding costs. But otherwise, it'll be a few weeks. And also that final result will be sent to the parties. I don't know if it gets put on the internet, if it gets, like, you can request it. I believe you can request a transcript from this, and maybe one day we should, because bloody hell, his rant. Like, no one else can do it like Alan, and it's not recorded, is it? Oh, it's recorded by the judge, by them, but I didn't record it, so I can't show it you. But you can imagine it was Alan Gold, like Alan Classic, the full rant. Off topic, slurring, reading things, showing the phone. When he was reading, he couldn't read the words properly. It was like one of his streams on this topic, because we've seen his streams, when he's in full flow on this topic. It was like one of those streams condensed down to like a what is it? He was going for it. I was able to get up and go outside at one point, bear in mind. So he was going for a good while, and they didn't stop him. And nor would they? Like, could you imagine being the judge on a trial? And he's not the judge of whether he's done this or not. He's the judge just for the money bit. But, like, being the judge in a trial for this defamation, and the defendant starts sitting there and fucking reeling off the defamation and, like, rattling it off. Like, it's like a Twilight Zone moment. Like, you're supposed to be defending yourself, and instead you're... Like, we've just told you what all these things are that you're supposed to be defending yourself from. You're supposed, you said that the family knew more than they were letting on, and there was a cover-up, and then 2 minutes later he's going, Rourke said this, and there was Kessinger. He didn't name her. He said the mistress, but Rourke said this, and the mistress. Like, I can't express to you how mad that was. He did say to them he's got no money. Yeah, he told them he's got no money. The point is, as well, it should have been about money. He should have been more focused on that, shouldn't he? But he was focused on having his say in front of someone who would listen. And in some way, in his fantasy world, his belief is that this judge has... And no offence to the judge, I'm sure he'll understand what I'm saying here. He doesn't even have the authority to change the judgment, does he? Like, he's not going to be able to go back and say, you know what, I did the remedials trial, and I don't think you've given me the correct judgment. I think Alan's innocent. Like, he can't do that. I want to put in an appeal on behalf of Alan. Like, he's not going to do that. The only thing he can do is be sympathetic to Alan, be kind to Alan. But it's more likely he's going to be sympathetic and kind to Frankie, isn't it? Because Frankie's the fucking claimant. Alan's the defendant. And Alan's just sat there and giving him classic Alan. Bombastic, selfish, rude, aggrandizing, ignorant of the... Like, early in the process, Frankie stated, after my family was murdered, this and this and this happened. And that sits really heavy. and the court understand. And Alan was like, my condolences. So anyway, oh, you fucking this and that. Like, yeah, big takeaway from me, like I said, was the we've come to the end of it now, so I'm talking to you a little bit. Big takeaway from me as well was the level that they put this in the court. They put Alan up there with Alex Jones, Sandy Hook, and this is, for once, Alan's going to get his big name in lights. You know, he gets to be the big one, doesn't he? He gets to be infamous, but as one of the worst people, as one of the worst cases of defamation. You know, I guess what's his name, Alex Jones carries on these days, doesn't he? But like Richard D. Hall's, I mean, Alan would love to be in the same comment. Okay, so listen, Alan would love to be in the same conversation as people like Richard D. Hall and Alex Jones for investigative work. And God help them, they both have done investigative work, even if they've gone a bit off the rails on some things as well. Yeah. Like, at least they have both done some work. Alan has never done any work of his own and would steal their work and then say it's his. But now he's in a conversation with people like that, so he gets that. He gets that as a little win. But it's only because he's in a conversation about who's the worst possible defamer in the UK ever. And they brought up these other cases, like I said, like, I think it was Jeremy Vine. I think Sutcliffe's name was mentioned. I don't know if that means Peter Sutcliffe. But all of these cases are high-profile, big cases. So, because it's the Remedies hearing, the point there is that it should be a lot of money. You know? Like, it's really big and serious. Alan didn't... Like, that missed him. I think that point sort of missed him and went over his head as he... I can't quite get my head around it. He went on the... I told you I read it out. He went on a rant that wasn't appropriate at any point. Cross-examined Frankie, which was inappropriate, and felt at the end, I have to say, you know, from Frankie, like, Frankie put up with a lot of shit, and like in good grace. You know, Alan, on the other hand, looked like one of the worst people ever, but like like it's like opposites day with Alan, isn't it? Like I can't understand how at the end he was like saying to the judge, like, you know, I could imagine Alan like patting the judge on the back and putting his arm around him and be like, oh, you know, you got this. You go away, make a judgment, mate. I'm glad that you're doing the judgment. You good judge. You know, it's like that. It's like, but with a bit more meekness, a bit more like, oh, I'm a dyslexic. Oh, thank you for being so nice, judge. Thank you for being so nice to the dyslexics. You know, like, yeah, he was a weak. Like, it was a weak, oh, thank you, judge. Like, you know, slivery slime at the end. Like, do you think that would sway it? Nah, I don't think that would. I don't think the judge is gonna buy that. Yeah, that's it. He tried to make it. That's a good summarization. He tried to make it all about himself, and he played the victim. And like, that would be okay if Alan had done the suing, wouldn't it? Wow. So yeah, I'm glad Frankie. I'm really grateful that Frankie's in the chat there, so you can ask him questions and talk to him. I hope that one day soon, maybe after the judgment. I don't know what the legal process is if we're not supposed to until maybe after the judgment or whatever. But we'll put it together. We'll put it together and we'll have a chat as well. We'll do email and whatever, and put it together. I'm sure between people who talk to each other, my email's available to Frankie, isn't it? I think, or I should be able to get a hold of his. Everything will be fine. Yeah. Carbon copy of Alex Jones. Ryan's attorney quit on him after he refused to settle. He's going to get nailed by the jury. Ryan insists Kelly never existed. It was all fake for money, says Betsy. I don't know much about it, but Sandy Hook. I remember Sandy Hook because I think it was real, and then Alex Jones said it wasn't, didn't he? Like, we're dealing with tragedy, and there's a few quotes in there. Most of them are Alan's, but Wilde said, didn't he? Tragedy as entertainment. Trauma as entertainment. Trauma as entertainment for profit. Trauma as entertainment for profit. Yeah. You know, that's bad. And yeah, it does show misogyny. That's what it rang to me. It did. I felt like he was boys clubbing the, or like, you know, sort of othering Frankie as well. Like, you know, Judge, I'm British, my country, our country, and then, you know, this American, like words like that. You know, trying to like make Frankie out to be this bad person, and we're on the same team, aren't we, Judge? And obviously the judge isn't going to go for that. Like the judge obviously felt much more kinship with the lawyer, who was talking to him on a, you know, one-to-one legal, you know, like a way that he's normally talked to. And then here's this guy, Alan, like, you know. And I do wonder, like, this guy, the judge, has got a background in human rights. He's argued on both sides of that background, actually. You know, when you're a lawyer, sometimes you work for the state and sometimes you work for the, you know, the people who are defended under the, you know, defence and prosecution. And he's worked human rights cases across the board for prisons and other things. So maybe sometimes he's arguing on the side of the prison, and maybe sometimes he's arguing on the side of the prisoner. But his like background and speciality, if what I've seen, involves human rights. He's worked with Amnesty International. And like Alan has done all these things on YouTube about how he doesn't like immigrants and he doesn't like Islamic people and he doesn't like this and he doesn't like that. And like he's been really horrible about all this stuff. And like, you know, he's not, whilst the human rights judge, human rights lawyer is going to treat Alan with respect, like he's not going to invalidate Alan's human rights by treating him like a piece of shit. But it just makes me wonder, you know, like deep down somewhere, Alan is in a room with people who probably really don't like him. And the way Alan behaves to them is like, oh, we're mates, ain't we? We're mates, yeah, because we're both men, geezers, ain't it? Like, but not that. Actually, no, I tell a lie. Not that. It was like, oh, will you be my daddy? Will you help me, daddy? But like, he just seems to think that they're going to be on, you know, them and him can form a bond. Like Alan and that judge with his background in human rights and all that can form a bond. I mean, it's the same irony as me thinking that they'd probably, I said that the lady judge would probably, me and her would probably get on, but maybe she'd think of me as like, you know, not quite on her level, you know. And I maybe I shouldn't, or should say this, like, you know, I did these true crime things on YouTube and said what I thought by watching a few videos of a few people on interviews. I hope I haven't done anything as bad as Alan. Surely not, you know, no concerted campaign, no big, you know, back and forth directly with people or anything like that. But I don't want to be anything near trauma for entertainment, you know. I don't want to be causing trauma. I didn't really think to myself, well, the person that I'm talking about in this video is going to be heavily traumatized by watching it. Like, I didn't really think about that person too much because, to be honest, I thought they might be a bad chuffer. So, like, you know, I just sort of said what I saw. But it troubles me too, you know. Like, what Alan didn't do is show any contrition, did he? He didn't apologise, he didn't change his mind, he didn't, like, you know, continued with it. But I've shown that I care and I've thought about it, you know. I want to move in a slightly different direction. I'm going to have to stand by what I said in the past. I'm going to have to keep being me, and, you know, my videos are up. I haven't said anything too bad, you know, but I'm not going to be like, oh, delete everything and pretend I'm someone I'm not. But I can learn and move forward as well, can't I? Yeah, I didn't do anything wrong. No, I haven't done anything horribly wrong like this. No, not at all. I'm not. Don't put me in this ballpark. No, not at all. But, you know, if I'm not human, then I'm not watching this thing and thinking, how can I improve? You know, I hope I don't. You know, do you know what I mean? Like, empathise with both parties, so to speak. A little bit. But yeah, no worries, London girl. Yeah, I have not done anywhere near any of the hard work today. I don't deserve any congratulations or praise. That all goes to the family, the Rusick family, to Frankie, to the lawyers that worked hard. I mean, to the lawyers are getting paid and it's their job, but, you know, they did a much better job than any of us could possibly do, didn't they? So, you know, raise a glass to DeWild and Cohen and Davis, who did what they were paid for, and more and above, actually, I should state, shouldn't I? More and above. You know, I think some of it might be a little bit more and above than you would get. You know, maybe they did a bit, you know, yeah. So raise a glass to them. And all I did was turn up and furiously write notes so that I could relate to you what happened as an observer. So this one isn't my fight necessarily. I've had my fight with Alan. Like, I've had a personal grievance with Alan. I still cover his story, but this one wasn't my personal fight. I know whose side I'm on, obviously. But yeah, any praise and any, pat on back. Let's give everyone a pat on the back. Give everyone a pat on the back. Give a pat on the back to Frankie and to the Rusick family and to all the people that supported them all these years as well. It's been a fucking long slog, and it's more than a YouTube community thing, isn't it? It's more like it's a different. Sometimes I disrespectfully refer to the troll group as like living in a rock pool. They can never let it go. They can never move on. They're in this little rock pool. Rock pool's a good example because like outside of that little rock pool, there's the whole ocean. There's the whole beach, and it's beautiful. But they refuse to climb out. They're like little crabs that refuse to climb out of this little bucket. They're stuck in this place. And it's like a little mini ecosystem. There's little fish, there's little things. It's like, you look closely, it's a whole world in there. A whole world they're trapped in and can never leave. And it used to be big numbers of views on YouTube. It used to be a big pool. But the tide's gone out, and they're just left adrift on this little rock pool. And I'm like, I don't think that's healthy, yeah? But that's for the trolls, that's what I say about those horrible trolls. But in another way, it's important to remember that, people like, I don't know them all. So, hands up here, I'm not part of this. I don't know if I'm respecting the right people. So I'm sure you in chat who do know, can give each other a pat on the back here. But I will say, people like Val, Lizzie, even some people I haven't always seen all of eye to eye to. Not Genetic Code, she's a horrible fucking... Genetic Code is stupid. Genetic Code, you're still yet to tell me that CCTV of that person who apparently threw a brick through Alan's house. If you think that's me, then would you just tell me which day of the fucking week it was, which date it was, and I will just provide an alibi, not a fake made up one, an actual real one, because it wasn't me. So like, that's easy for me. Is just do the basics of a true crime investigation instead of just putting a weird picture on the internet and saying it's me. That's slander itself. I should be coming after you next, shouldn't I? There's been some idiots out there, but the good people, the good people, they've backed Frankie and the family, and they've had to put up with this shit themselves. They've been trolled themselves. Alan's idiots that he's gathered are pretty horrible as well. There were some that were backing Alan, and part of this divide and this debate about whether they should have done the crowdfund and whether they shouldn't, and it all got very petty. And the big deal is Alan did all this stuff. The court doesn't give a fuck about what this one said to that one in a YouTube comment, and I'm saying congratulations to people like Val and stuff, and me as well here. The court doesn't give a fuck about my videos and what I've said about Alan and whether I've made a point and this and that. And the court was dealing with this more important stuff, wasn't it? Like I said, it's about perspectives. So when Alan went on his rant, it was all irrelevant. And when he was like cross-examining Frankie, it came down to the lawyer said, that's not the point of contention that we're suing on. Like, all of this YouTube nonsense, this nonsense world, has all been irrelevant. All of the going back and forth, all of the things they think are evidence and their files and their folders and they're proving things, it's all irrelevant. The court's going to decide in grown-up world. So you don't need the rock pool anymore. But, for the supporters, it's not just a rock pool. It's a community. It's like something they've carried together. And yeah, I was saying about pats on backs. That group, and I don't determine who's in it and who's not. I don't know everyone, but like that group deserve the pats on the backs for staying strong through all of it, for not backing down, and like they've been they've been bullied, incredibly bullied. Horribly bullied, some of those people. Harassed themselves. They could all have court cases against different people. It would never end. But they're the people that deserve a big pat on the back as well, you know. Yeah, that's what I think. And Frank, you know, obviously the main point that we are not going to forget is that it was a horrible thing that happened to innocent people, and Frankie and the family are the ones that live on in the wake of that, and they're the real victims, you know, the victims of the crime and the victims, and it all centres around some beautiful people who were tragically taken. So that's no joking matter, and my stuff's all about messing about, isn't it? So yeah, maybe I shouldn't finish on that, but you know, we all know what's really important here, don't we? You know, we all know what's really important. So yeah, that was a big rant that came, all of that came. Is that a bit audacity? Is that you saying it about me? Oh, here we go. I don't know. All of that just came out because someone said that I deserve a bit of praise, and I honestly, I don't. You know, I'm not trying to be modest here. I really don't. Frankie said about a documentary. Fox released on Monday. His dad's in it. We'll have a look. Yeah. I did say as well, I'll said it publicly, I'll say it privately to you. If there's anything ever you want from me, like, I understand that we should talk. I think that'd be great. I'd love to talk to you privately. If you want to use my platform as a voice, I'm happy to do so, but I'm not here to try and leverage you into saying, oh, can you do a show for me and can I get some views and clicks? Like, we can just talk privately, and just whatever you want to do is up to you. But if you ever want to use my platform to, you know, to have a voice, like you say, to share a voice or have, you know, something to say, you're always welcome here, and on the main channel as well. You know, not this silly mess around channel, but on the main channel. You know, and we take it seriously and do it properly. So that's always a door open. Yeah. It seemed like a David and Goliath thing, says Betsy. He was so big platform-wise. Individuals worked tirelessly to expose him for years. Alan appeared to be quite big at one point, didn't he? Yeah, he did. I wonder to myself whether that was partially illusion. Like, he inflated his own numbers. People view-bot their channels to make them seem better. And, you know, he wanted to be the tallest poppy, didn't he? The idea that if you have a bigger group watching you, you'll get more people. And if somebody starts, then the others start coming, and so they do view botting and fake subs and stuff. You know, I don't believe his sub count was real, but it all came back to bite him in the end, didn't it? The bigger he was, the worse it's going to be for him. You know, all of that pride, all of that ego is going to be something that comes around to bite him. Don't share any part of the documentary; it's all under copyright. Okay, I won't. I won't. No problem. We'll do a video when it's over. Yeah, good shout. We'll have a chat, and you know, just go from there. Everything does need a cooling off period and a breathing out period, and I hope that you just, like, I just hope that, like, you know, something, life becomes different after things, doesn't it? I don't have to explain this to you, I know, but like, life becomes different after certain things. We should talk privately, really. You just have to carry on, though, don't you? And then you do, and you just, like, it's day by day, and you carry on. But you know, like I'm talking about general grief and stuff that we share, but this is something else, like being harassed by people like Al. I mean, mind you, I've also been harassed, so, but this is another level of something that you shouldn't have to deal with. Like, I don't know what I'm saying now. It's making me emotional again, so I'll just stop from saying it. Yeah. It's just, you know, day by day, isn't it? Day by day. Big ups, Lizzie. Should I start laying into caca now? Can I start laying into caca? Yeah, a picture of caca. Should I get a picture of caca on there and I'll put my willy in her mouth? Caca! That's probably happening now, isn't it? I mean, right now, Alan's probably 3 sheets to the wind. Because this happened at 10:30 in the morning, this case. It finished at 1:30 in the afternoon We were going for like 3.5 hours. And Alan seemed a little bit slurry at the start. You know, I don't know if it was the tramadol still wearing off. He seemed a little bit slurry at the start. So by now it's like 8:30, 8:45 in the evening. Like, he's going to be hammered now. And the people who are going to bear the brunt of this, because I don't imagine his family are going to want to, like, I don't imagine his family are really going to want to hear any more about this. So the people, I mean, my family don't want to hear about this. I talk about, no, but like, the people who are going to bear the brunt of this are going to be like, you know, as much as this is a time for, it's hard to say, I don't want to say celebration, like consolidation, you know, patting each other on the back. At their end, they're going to be yelling and someone's going to have to take the blame. Why didn't you do this? How come you did that? Or he might be celebrating, thinking this has gone really well. It's now off his back. The judge is on my side. We can only hope. But one thing I'll be sure is he'll be drunk. That's my opinion, allegedly. But, you know, that's one thing for sure, isn't it? Caca! Caca! It's like at the end of a film when the camera pulls away and, like, you see this little man in a little box room, angry, shout. He's got the microphone, but it's not plugged in. The light's not shining on it. You know, the camera pulls away and he's going, caca! 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 Yeah, big ups, Frankie. Take a nap. This is sign off time now. Yeah, this is sign off time. I shouldn't drive it on too much longer. I do feel shell shocked. I can't imagine what it's like to be in your shoes. God bless. Yeah. God bless. And let that be a lesson to you all. Except for me, who's going to go on carrying on saying outrageous things on the internet. With the hypocrisy of everything I've just said hanging over me. Oh no. I'm only trying to have a laugh. There is a massive difference, isn't there? Like, you know, I'm not trying to hurt anyone or be mean. I'm only trying to have a laugh. Except genetic code. We'd be mean to genetic code. We could be mean to genetic code with that massive big white shoe. Big shoes to fill. All right, let's not bring her into it. What a wild ride. What a wild ride. Yep. Consequences now. I can't believe that he would go into court and do that he did today, but Alan is a wild one. He's a special kind of guy. And I guess we play us out with the song that we played us in with, because this one was actually written. It's AI, obviously. It's AI. I don't believe in words. I don't believe in... This was written by AI, and it's just words, and I don't believe in words. But this was actually... The lyrics for this song were put forward by one of Alan's former supporters. And you can move away from people who are manipulative and horrible into a kinder and better space. And I suppose I can't believe I'm going to say this, because I've just dissed genetic code a couple of times, but I can't believe I'm going to say this. But, you know... It is important that we should be able to find a way of forgiving people, because when you forgive people, you can let things go and you can move on. And they can have done horrible things, but by not forgiving, and forgiveness, like, you know, talk to the priests about it. But it allows you that ability to say, okay, I've let that go. You can hold that now. Like, this horrible thing that I'm angry about, like, I'm just going to say I forgive you. And just, like, let you hold it now. You can deal with it. Because I'm just tired of dealing with it. And, like, you know, it involves letting it go, doesn't it? And, like, accepting it and just moving on. Like, this is not going to sound good, but the world's full of horrible things. And we can't constantly think about them all the time. And, you know, sometimes it's just a simple distraction. Sometimes it's something that makes you laugh. Sometimes it's, you know, having something different to do. But in the big picture, in the long-term scheme of things, I shouldn't encourage this, because I want you to stay here and come back and watch my streams, you know, and like keep coming back. But maybe we'll find something different to talk about, and it won't always be Alan. So maybe the consistency can be me and us and our friendship, but like the letting it go and the moving on can be from some of the horrible things that don't do us any good to keep focusing on. And I'm basically shouting out God here, shouts out to Jesus. But you know, forgiveness is part of the Bible, isn't it? And it's a really, 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 really difficult thing to do. Like, it's a really difficult and strange thing to suggest in the face of the worst things. But that's the whole point of it. And like I said, I just think partly it's just being able to take something off and let it go and move on, you know. Like, you can hold that now, Alan. Like, obviously you're still going to hold on to it, so, you know, you can hold that, you know. We will come back to check in on him from time to time. I'll give you an Alan watch every now and then if he does anything notable. But yeah, like, next thing you'll hear from this will probably be an Alan watch, but after that, you know, will be how much he's got to pay, won't it? We'll keep checking in, but we'll also move on. I've lost my window where I'm talking to you. There's the window. More windows than Buckingham Palace. More windows than Buckingham Palace, mate. Absolutely, Amanda. For Frankie to carry this, you know, in this way, it's more than a defamation claim against a man on the internet. It's way more than that. And, you know, it's... for me to casually talk about forgiveness and love and stuff is... I didn't say the word love, but, you know, and love and stuff is... facile in the face of that, you know, like, but yeah. Get back to Manning. One final point there, Lizzie. Did you see his recent Madeline thing that he did? I did cover it. Alan did the translations with AI, but he didn't realise that the translations that the AI was giving him were just your work that the AI has found on the internet and then given him. It wasn't retranslating it. He said, can I have a translation of the Madeleine McCann stuff? And he said, absolutely, look, here's some translations, there you go. And he thought that AI was giving him a new one, so he could say, that's not their translation, it's a new one, and now I can talk about it. And he's an idiot. So things go in full circle. He's charging £10 a go for that on Patreon, but he's only done 2 episodes because he can't be arsed. It's going to peter out for him. It's going to peter out for him. We'll see. We'll see. Big ups DC Primetime. Yeah, and this song was written by DC Primetime. So everyone enjoy, and you be good. And if you can't be good, then you're naughty.
So I sang with kids on mule, not a good
Sorry, I should say thank you. Thank you.
look, such a fool. I changed the case, why aren't they thanking me? Oh, well, off to Thailand where I paid for ladies spanking me. YouTube doesn't want me, cancelled and it haunts me. Where have all the patrons gone? Good luck with your channel, son. Blinded by the money, where's Nancy when I want her? I'm just an old man who likes ladies with nice hair. YouTube doesn't want me, cancelled and it haunts me. Where have all the patrons gone? Good luck with your channel, son. Blinded by that. I'm just an old man who likes ladies with nice hair. YouTube doesn't want me, cancelled and it haunts me. Where have all the patrons your channel, son. Blinded by the money. Where's Nancy when I want her? I'm just an old man who likes ladies with nice hair. YouTube doesn't want me. Cancel and it haunts me. Where have all the patrons gone? Good luck with your channel, son. Blinded by the money. Where's Nancy when I want her? I'm just an old man who likes ladies with nice hair. YouTube doesn't want me, doesn't want me. Cancel and it haunts me. Good luck with your channel, stranger one's gone. Good luck with your channel, son. Good luck with your channel, son. Good luck with your channel, son.